Chapter 780. Fastidious. Wang Dequan looked at Du Qing and laughed. When Du Qing was punished, there was a sense of pleasure in his heart. When he was still a small policeman, Du Qing was high up and didn't put them in his eyes at all. He went to his place to collect some protection fee. Oh no, management fee. Du Qing actually dared to order his underlings to carry him out and throw him on the street. As time went by and his position rose, it was harder for him to let go of that incident. That incident was like a fishbone, deeply stuck in his throat, unable to get out or go down. Du Qing, he was just a gangster leader. How dare he treat him like this? He had held grudges for many years and waited for many years. If Du Qing hadn't voluntarily surrendered himself, if someone hadn't wanted to trample him to death, he would never have exposed his dissatisfaction with Du Qing. After all, he was now a famous business tycoon. However, he had offended someone he couldn't afford to offend. He had to surrender himself to the police station, and someone sent him to him. With so many coincidences added up, if he didn't know how to grasp it, he would have been wronged for so many years in vain. Now, Du Qing's life and death were in his hands. Even if he asked someone to beat him to death, it could also be said that he had a heart attack. Anyway, he had checked Du Qing's information, and Du Qing had a lot of small problems. Wang Dequan seemed to have heard the best joke in the world. He held his stomach and laughed until he couldn't breathe, saying, "Fastidious? Did I hear it wrong? A gangster leader told me that I'm not fastidious? What is this? It's like a murderer telling us, you don't respect the law." Haha, Du Qing, are you confused? Such words, how can you have the nerve to say it? You're not fastidious. Du Qing didn't laugh. His forehead was dripping with blood, and the blood slid down his cheeks, giving him a kind of mournful and sinister temperament. You weren't fastidious back then, and you're still not fastidious now. Du Qing looked at Wang Dequan and said, "Do you know why I asked someone to throw you out? When others came over, I would give them good cigarettes and wine, and I would not miss a cent. But you're different from them. You're not fastidious, and you directly doubled the money we should pay. You broke the rules. If I had promised you that time, you would soon have quadrupled it, 8-fold, 16-fold, until we could not afford it. Gangsters are people too. They need to look after the place, wash the dishes, and serve the customers to earn money. If you take away so much, how are they supposed to live? What happened back then is already in the past. I'm talking about the present. As the saying goes, you can see the old from 3 years old. You haven't changed much from how you were back then." Du Qing's lips curled into a smile as if he was mocking Wang Dequan for not growing up. "You're not at all particular now. You should know that when everyone's status reaches a certain level, everyone will part on good terms. Harmony breeds wealth, right? I know you have a heavy responsibility on your shoulders, so I won't make things difficult for you. I've told you everything that I should. My explanation is equivalent to giving an explanation to the higher-ups for you." Du Qing gently shook his head and said, "I'm thinking for you, but you're not thinking for me at all." He looked back at the 2 men in black who were responsible for the torture and said, "What is this? Playing with torture? You're not smart, so I can only think of a way to make you smarter," Wang Dequan said coldly. He didn't like Du Qing's gaze. He didn't like Du Qing's smile. He didn't like how Du Qing still dared to look at him like that even though he was already a prisoner. "Du Qing, if you've come to your senses, then hurry up and tell us the truth. Tell us the truth. Did someone instigate you to do those things? Is there something else you're hiding from us?" "Wang Dequan, I can tell you honestly that Feng Yan is a good person. He's a good person who can go to heaven even if he dies. He wouldn't instigate me to do those things. If he knew that I did those things that you think I did, he would immediately cut off all ties with me. In this world, not all successful people are as dirty as you think, and not all people are as unscrupulous as you think. I've said it before, I've said what I should say. I won't tell you a single word of what you want to hear. There's a path to heaven that you don't want to take. All right, Du Qing waved his hand. When he waved his arm, the shackles on his hands clanked. "I'm more familiar with these lines than you, and I can say them with more vigor than you. What are you going to do? Hurry up and start. You've got guts and loyalty." Wang Dequan clapped his hands and laughed. Soon, his expression became as gloomy as iron. he shouted. Loosen his bones, let him sober up. Bang! Another iron rod hit Du Qing's back. No, it was the discarded newspapers that were padded on his back. Bang, bang, bang. The rod hit him again and again. With each hit, Du Qing's body staggered and fell forward. The rib cage in his chest hit the metal table and made a puss sound. Soon, he straightened his back and sat up. After dozens of strikes, Du Qing's reaction speed became slower and slower, and it took him longer and longer to get up. However, every time the iron rod hit him down, he would sit up straight again with his head held high and chest puffed out. Previously, he only vomited blood from his mouth, but now his nose and eyes were bleeding. His internal organs were severely injured, and the bones in the back of his body were about to break. This was a special torture method that would break the bones and internal organs inside but leave no visible external wounds. Du Qing knew that he could really be beaten to death by them. Bang! Another rod hit him from behind. Du Qing's head laid on the table in front of him, not moving for a long time. Wang Dequan walked to the front of Du Qing and grabbed his hair to pull his head up. Looking at his bloody and wretched appearance, Wang Dequan coldly said, Du Qing, you should already know the current situation, right? Someone wants you dead and I don't want you to live. Say it, and I'll give you relief. The dignified boss of Qing Hong has to bear such humiliation, even I can't bear it. Du Qing, say it, and I'll give you dignity. Live or die, I'll give you dignity. Wang Dequan, Du Qing opened his heavy eyelids, looked at the fierce man in front of him, and said, You're not particular. Yes, I'm not particular, Wang Dequan didn't deny. If you're not particular, then I'm also not particular, Du Qing said. Do you know who I am? You're Du Qing, the famous leader of hoodlums in Huaqing. Yes, I'm Du Qing, the famous leader of hoodlums in Huaqing. Tell me, if I die in your hands, what will you do? Wang Dequan smirked coldly and said, Du Qing, what? Are you revealing your true intentions? Are you threatening me? Why don't you think you're a dying man? What right do you have to threaten me? Wang Dequan, do you know? Although I, Du Qing, have countless women, I've never been single, I know you're a playboy. Men like you who have done too many bad things are afraid that your son won't have an asshole. I don't have a wife or son, so I don't have any scruples. Wang Dequan, you do. You're different from me. What do you mean? Wang Dequan's expression froze and asked in a low voice. You're not particular, so I can also be very particular with people who are not particular. Wang Dequan, I believe you, I might die here. But have you ever thought I, Du Qing, have tens of thousands of disciples? Can you capture them one by one? Kill them one by one? If you can't capture them all, you can't clean them up. As long as one escapes the net, they'll find your family, your wife and children. Wang Dequan, no one has ever said this to you before, right? To be honest, although I'm a leader of hoodlums, I believe that one should be particular when doing things. I believe that everyone should take responsibility for their own mistakes, not their wives and children. That's why I've never said this to anyone else. I think it's unstylish and embarrassing. But today, Du Qing coughed violently. He covered his mouth with his hand, and his palm was filled with fresh blood. He used his elbow to support himself on the table and slowly pushed his body up. He ran a hand through his hair to make it look less messy. He forced himself to stay alert and once again straightened his back. His checkered waistcoat was clean and neat, giving off a sense of elegance. His black suit and black trench coat were stained with blood, but he still gave off a gentlemanly feeling. He looked at Wang Dequan, his voice hoarse but unyielding. Today, I'll make an exception. Wang Dequan, I, Du Qing, reserve your wife and children. You're threatening me, you. Du Qing no longer looked at Wang Dequan, but turned to look at the two tall men, saying, You've worked hard, I don't dare to trouble the two of you. Take a break, I'll do it myself. The two tall men looked at Du Qing's calm and cold expression, and couldn't help but take a step back. At this time, Du Qing had an intimidating aura. Like a vicious tiger, even if it was heavily injured, it wouldn't allow those chickens and dogs to invade it. Thank you. Seeing the two tall men step back, Du Qing grinned at them. Then, he slammed his head on the iron table in front of him. Clang, clang, clang. Chapter 781. There was a saying in Jianghu, "The arrogant are afraid of the stupid, and the stupid are afraid of the reckless." In the process of promotion, Wang Dequan had also done a lot of things that crossed the bottom line. He had always thought that he was a dangerous man who did not care about his life. However, after seeing Du Qing's performance at this moment, he realized that compared to his own self-awareness, he realized that he was simply not up to par. It wasn't that he didn't care about his life, but he was just being unreasonable. For so many years, he couldn't even be arrogant. What a cruel truth. Clang, clang, clang. Du Qing was still banging against the wall with all his might, as if he wanted to smash his head. He wanted to kill himself in front of Wang Dequan. His forehead was dripping with blood. The blood blurred his eyes and slid down his cheeks, flowing down his neck and onto his white shirt. Because his shirt was so white and straight, it was so bright and dazzling after being stained with blood, and it was a ghastly sight. His flesh and blood were sticky, and the wound on his forehead could no longer be seen clearly. Every time they collided, there would be a heavy thud on the iron table. Clang, clang, clang. Because Du Qing used too much force, grooves of different sizes appeared on the metal table. Clang, clang, clang. With every knock, another groove would appear. When he knocked his head on the same spot, the previous dent became bigger and deeper, as if the iron shell was about to break apart. Clang, hing, hing. Every time Du Qing's head smashed against the metal table, it felt like he was smashing against the faces and hearts of Wang Dequan and the others. It felt like he was trying to smash open the gates of hell, for himself and for Wang Dequan and the others. "Captain." A tall uniformed man's face was filled with panic. He pointed at Du Qing, who was still hitting his head with all his might, wanting to commit suicide, and said, "Something will happen to him. Something will happen to him like this. Captain, what do we do now?" The other uniformed man was also frightened. They were in this line of work, and they often used private torture on others. But today, they hadn't even done anything, and the suspect had already done it. This was the first time they had seen something like this. It was only then that they realized the man's identity. Not only was he the prisoner Du Qing who had turned himself in, he was also the leader of Qing Hong, the underground godfather of Flower City with tens of thousands of subordinates. Even now, he wasn't someone they could bully at will. The one who was suffering the most was Wang Dequan. Perhaps Du Qing would not remember the names of the two black-clothed men who had carried out the torture. In fact, he would not even bother to remember their names. He knew that they had been ordered by someone else, and he would not lower himself to the level of such insignificant people. However, he would definitely take revenge on him. Just as he had said, his wife was already reserved by Du Qing. He wasn't joking. If he died here today, the enraged members of the Green-Red Gang would really take revenge on all of Wang Dequan's relatives and children. Wang Dequan didn't dare to imagine what they would do. He wasn't afraid of thieves stealing, but he was afraid of thieves remembering. However, if he were to give up on Du Qing just like that, how was he going to explain it to the higher-ups? Explain to those who wanted Du Qing to bite or die? Previously, Wang Dequan was very excited, feeling that the best opportunity had arrived. If he could do this job well, he would have a meteoric rise in his career, or even several steps forward. Moreover, he could humiliate Du Qing, just like how Du Qing humiliated him in the past. But how did things become like this? Du Qing. Wang Dequan's forehead was drenched in cold sweat as he clenched his teeth and shouted Du Qing's name. Quang. Du Qing acted as though he didn't notice it as he continued to knock his head hard. His strength was getting weaker and his speed was getting slower and slower. His eyes were already finding it hard to open. He was relying on his body's inertia to do this. You bunch of trash. Wang Dequan finally couldn't hold on any longer. He scolded the two tall men. Hurry up and stop him. Do you really want to see him die in front of you? Let me tell you, I, Wang Dequan, have to bear the responsibility. None of you can escape. When the two uniformed men heard Wang Dequan's order, they hurriedly supported Du Qing on his left and right, preventing him from knocking his head on the metal table again. Bang! Du Qing was still using his head to knock forward, but this time, his head knocked onto the chest of one of Wang Dequan's men. Dear passengers and friends, Flight A73001 from Huacheng to Yanjing has arrived. We, the Sky Alliance. The sound of the broadcast in the cabin woke Fang Yan up. He didn't sleep last night, and today he was busy dealing with all kinds of unexpected situations. He was also busy rushing to the airport before the matter was over, so his body was indeed a little tired. He naturally couldn't waste some rest time on the plane. He always needed to maintain his best mental state. The battle had just begun. Who knew what would happen later? He opened his eyes and looked out the window. The sky was gloomy, and it was still drizzling outside. This made Fang Yan's mood even gloomier, and he could only secretly pray in his heart that everything would go smoothly on this trip to Yanjing. Fang Yan came to Yanjing alone, and he didn't bring any luggage. After the plane landed, he directly took the flight company's VIP car and left first. When he walked to the exit, he immediately saw a tall and handsome man who was like a statue of a Greek god standing at the exit to welcome him. Eagle Moo. Because of Eagle Moo's outstanding appearance, all the people at the exit looked at his face. Some bold girls even took the initiative to come up to him and ask for his phone number. When he shook his head and refused, those girls were on the verge of tears, and their hearts were about to break. Fang Yan couldn't bear it anymore. So he walked up to Eagle Moo and said, "If they want your phone number, just give it to them. You don't have to contact them every day." "Thank you, uncle." Seeing that someone had spoken up for them, the two girls who came to ask for Eagle Moo's phone number bowed and thanked Fang Yan together. "Uncle?" The flesh on Fang Yan's face twitched, and he regretted being a busybody. "You've arrived." Eagle Moo looked at Fang Yan with a smile and said, "This kind of thing always happens. If I give my phone number to everyone who asks for it, my number will become a public phone." This time, it was even more serious. Fang Yan planned to have a good talk with Qin Tian. If he wanted to send someone to pick him up at the airport next time, could he not send a guy like Eagle Moo? When he stood with Eagle Moo, people would always suspect that he was the one carrying the bags. As an outstanding protagonist, Fang Yan couldn't stand this kind of treatment. Qin Tian's actions were always so noble and extraordinary, as if she never wanted to hide her wealth. She didn't have the awareness of being a heroine at all. If you don't hide your identity, if you don't hide your wealth, how can anyone bully you? If no one bullies you, how can the male protagonist save the damsel in distress? How can he act cool and slap her in the face? Behind Eagle Moo were 4 tall men in black. They looked cool and professional, like bodyguards from a big family. There was a long Rolls-Royce parked at the entrance, and Fang Yan recognized it as Qin Tian's car. Qin Tian sent his own car to pick him up. Eagle Moo personally opened the car door for Fang Yan, and after Fang Yan got in, he opened the door from the other side and got in. He sat next to Fang Yan and said, "It's really late today, and Miss can't make arrangements. You should rest well. Tomorrow morning, she will personally pick you up and take you to see the person you want to see." Fang Yan nodded. This was the benefit of hanging out with smart people. You didn't need to think about anything, and others would do it for you. You just needed to follow her arrangements, and every step of the way wouldn't make you feel uncomfortable or disappointed. Tuning this girl? How did she look like this? Fang Yan looked at Eagle Moo and asked, "How's Tian recently?" Eagle Moo grinned and said, "Did you hear some rumors, so you want to get an answer from me?" "I heard some bad rumors," Fang Yan said embarrassedly. He knew that these people were all shrewd people. Trying to pry information from them was a form of disrespect in the first place. "Some people said that the Jiang family and the Qin family are working together, so I'm a little worried." "I understand what you're worried about. But I can't tell you this," Eagle Moo said with a smile. "I'm a member of the Qin family, and I support everything the Qin family does. Even if I don't support it, I won't oppose it. Whatever answer the Qin family gives you, that's the answer I can give you. So, before the Qin family gives you an answer, I can't give you any information." "You're really—" Fang Yan smiled bitterly. "A good dog?" "No, a good person," Fang Yan praised. "I have brothers like that with me, and one of them turned himself in for me. I understand his situation, and I know what he's going to face. However, I didn't stop him from doing it." "But because he's my brother," Fang Yan said with a smile, "what he did for me is what I'm willing to do for him, I really envy your relationship. Eagle Moo chuckled. Miss wouldn't say something like that to me. What would Miss say to you? She said, Eagle Moo, you're too good-looking and Fong Yen won't like you. Why don't you go for plastic surgery and make yourself uglier? That way, when I marry Fong Yen, you can still serve me. Chapter 782. Did she really say that? Fong Yen asked in shock. How could Qin Tian say that? She really understood him too well. Fong Yen thought Qin Tian was becoming more and more adorable. But when did they get married? When did he say he was going to marry Qin Tian? This lass is always so lawless. She's too reckless. Mu Ying shrugged his shoulders, looking handsome. Fortunately, there were only men in the car, and no woman saw him like this. Otherwise, someone would be crazy about him. Fong Yen didn't like crazy people. Even Hua Xia's 7 addicts were no exception. Of course not, Mu Ying said helplessly. I'm her loyal confidant. If she really treats me like this, wouldn't it be too sad? I knew it. Fong Yen breathed a sigh of relief and said, Qin Etienne is a girl with a high EQ. She wouldn't say something so rude. But she did worry about it, Mu Ying said helplessly. She looked at me a few times and said, Mu Ying, you're too good-looking. You have to think of a way. If she said I was ugly and she asked me to think of a way, I would know that she wanted me to have plastic surgery. But I'm already like this and she still asked me to think of a way. What does that mean? Fong Yen looked at Mu Ying's exquisite facial features and said with jealousy, Look, you're better looking than many girls. Maybe your mistress thinks you're too much of a show-off, so she wants you to keep a low profile. No, she's not someone who doesn't have confidence in herself. Mu Ying shook his head firmly. Everyone thinks that she's the #1 beauty in Yanjing, and she must think so in her heart. Even if she never said it, and she always acted cold and indifferent to this kind of thing. But that must be what her psychology thinks. Mu Ying looked at Fong Yen and said, She just doesn't have confidence in you. Fong Yen had a feeling that the trip to Beijing would not be smooth. The car stopped at the entrance of an ancient villa. Fong Yen got off the car and looked at the antique courtyard. He asked, Where is this? Mu Ying glanced at Fong Yen and said, Mrs. House. Why are we here? Fong Yen asked. Isn't that a little inconvenient? Why don't you send me to the hotel? Why do you care? Mu Ying asked, looking at Fong Yen. You're worried that this will bring trouble to Miss, aren't you? You also know. Fong Yen bitterly smiled and said, Some time ago, there were rumors about me and Etienne in Beijing, and some of them were very unpleasant to hear. Now that I'm living in her house, doesn't that make people even more suspicious? I don't care about it, but it's not good for the girl's reputation. Mu Ying grinned, made an inviting gesture, and said, Since you don't care, there's no need to go anywhere else. Do you think Miss will care about what others say? Is there anything in this world that she cares about? It's not good for you to make enemies for your Miss, right? Miss doesn't lack money, nor does she lack career. She has the looks and wisdom. What she lacks is a lover and an enemy. The courtyard door opened and a servant ran over to open it. Mu Ying looked at the young woman who quickly came over and said, This is Mr. Fong, a very important person to Mississippi. Please treat him well. He then pointed to the woman and said to Fong Yen, This is Mrs. Housekeeper, Coco. If you need anything, you can ask her to do it. Coco showed the professionalism of a personal butler. He bowed respectfully to Fong Yen and said with a face full of smiles, Hello, Mr. Fong. I'm Mrs. Personal Butler, Coco. Miss specially called me to tell me that a friend will be staying here and asked me to take good care of him. Mr. Fong, you just got off the plane, right? I've prepared a simple dinner for you according to your taste. Before that, if you'd like, you can go outside and soak in the hot spring for a while. The hot spring water is ready, and the clothes are placed next to the hot spring pool. Mu Ying said goodbye to Fong Yen and asked Fong Yen to have a good rest tonight. Miss would come to pick him up the next morning. Of course, Fong Yen wanted to soak in the hot spring first. Before he got close to the pool, he could hear the bubbling sound and the faint smell of sulfur. It was indeed the most authentic Mount Tangshan hot spring. The hot spring was open air and was isolated from the outside world by dense trees. You could see outside from the inside, but you couldn't see inside from the outside. Fang Yen took off all his clothes and sat in the hot spring pool with only a pair of shorts on. He couldn't help but let out a comfortable moan. The temperature of the hot spring was just right as he soaked in it, opening up every pore on his body. It made Fang Yen feel extremely comfortable. All the fatigue on his body was swept away, and his mind became much clearer. He felt like he had been reborn. Fang Yen looked around at the elegant installations and some simple but unique furnishings. He immediately realized that this was the pool that Qin Yitian used to soak in. He actually used Qin Yitian's pool. He actually shared a hot spring with Qin Yitian, but when he thought about how the hot spring outside was shared by countless people, he felt that it wasn't a big deal after all. Anyway, Qin Yitian wasn't here now. What was Qin Yitian doing now? What was the Qin family's choice? Did they reach a secret agreement with the Jiang family? What about Qin Yitian? Her position? He believed that Qin Yitian naturally knew her position. But would this make things difficult for her in the middle? There was a slight sound of footsteps. Coco! Fang Yen rested his head on the wall of the hot spring and said, "Don't rush to eat. I want to soak for a while." The sound of footsteps got closer. Then one foot reached into the hot spring, and another foot reached in. Fang Yen was furious. What did she think he was? She even dared to arrange this kind of health care program that insulted him. What kind of person did she think he was? Fang Yen stood up and was ready to use his eyes to condemn the girl who dared to break into the hot spring. Fang Yan's eyes widened as he looked at the long-haired girl in a black swimsuit sitting in the pool, and he asked, "Why are you here? This is my home. Why can't I be here?" The girl's eyes twinkled like the stars in the sky. There was a faint smile on her face. She looked at Fang Yen seriously as if she was admiring the most precious treasure in the world. "Didn't Eagle Moo say, 'I told Eagle Moo that I would come to find you tomorrow'? I'm a girl. How could I tell Eagle Moo that you brought Fang Yen here and that I would wait for him at home? How could I tell them that?" The girl's voice was clear and crisp. But why did I come to soak in the hot spring? No, what I mean is that, Mr. Fang, are you really that surprised by my arrival? From what I know about you, you should have guessed these things in advance, right? The young girl stretched out her snow-white and tender arms and cupped the hot spring bubbles one after another. She said, "You have so many doubts in your heart, and all kinds of things that have happened or will happen soon. If I don't come to see you, the doubts in your heart will become even deeper and stronger. You definitely won't be able to sleep well tonight, right? How could I bear to do that? It's so late. I thought it wasn't convenient for you to come out." Fang Yen explained. "It's not convenient for me to come out. But as long as you want to do something, you can always think of a way, right? For example, I used to think that since the hot spring here is so good, it would be great if you could come and soak in it. I just thought about it. Now I can do it. Isn't that right?" Qin Yitian, "Mr. Fang, don't be nervous." Qin Yitian looked at Fang Yen, who was huddled in the corner, and giggled. She splashed a handful of water on his face and said, "We're just taking a bath together. I don't need you to take any responsibility. If I have to take responsibility for something like this, who would dare to go swimming in public?" "Thank you." Fang Yen looked at the beautiful and flawless woman who was like a fairy in the forest. He felt that his throat was a little blocked. He said in a deep voice, "I'm very happy that you can come. I'm very happy. I believe in you. I've always believed in you. But for you to appear in front of me, I still feel it's a pleasant surprise." "Of course," Qin Yitian said as if it was a matter of course. "I'm the most beautiful woman in Yanjing. Not every man has the opportunity to soak in the hot spring with me. This is my bath. I designed it myself. Since it was built, I'm the only one who has soaked in it. Now there's one more person, and it's a man. Fortunately, I don't hate this man. It's my honor. I'll definitely enjoy it," Fang Yen said with a smile. "When I soaked my body in just now, I felt that the pressure that I've endured these days was swept away. It seems that you can sleep well tonight," Qin Yitian said with a smile. Fang Yen looked at Qin Yitian and asked, "Who am I going to see tomorrow?" "Of course, the person who has the most ability to help you." Is her attitude the same as yours? Qin Etian shook his head. She wants to maintain cooperation with the Jiang family? Fang Yan's heart began to sink. For a long time, he and Lu Chaoga's backer was the woman who controlled the Qin family. If she also wanted to maintain cooperation with the Jiang family, then their days would really be difficult. No, I don't understand her. Qin Etian looked at Fang Yan and said. Chapter 783. Her eyes were like stars, and her lips were like cherry blossoms. Her black hair was like a waterfall, and her skin was whiter than snow. Under the cover of the bubbling water, most of Qin Etian's body was swallowed by the bubbles, but her exposed thin shoulders and large snow-white chest were still dazzling. This girl's skin was white and tender, just like a newborn baby's. No, she was even better than a newborn baby's. She was noble, perfect, and flawless. She had the innocence of a young girl, but also a mature charm like a dragonfly skimming the surface of the water. She was like a red plum tree in the middle of a snowstorm, like a lotus petal on a white dress, perfectly embellished. Fang Yan hadn't seen Qin Etian for a while. She was still the Qin Etian he was familiar with, but she was a little different from what he had imagined. She had grown up a little, matured a little, and her youthful eyes had become a little more mature. Most importantly, she had learned how to seduce a man. Of course, perhaps she didn't even realize that she was doing such a thing. However, a 16-year-old beautiful girl showing her devilish figure in front of a man, even if it was only a small part, was still breathtakingly beautiful. In Fang Yan's eyes, she was a goddess of beauty, but also a devil. Impulsiveness wasn't a devil, only a devil could make people impulsive. Of course, Fang Yan wasn't the kind of person you think he was. You don't understand? Fang Yan raised his eyebrows and said, You don't understand what she's thinking either? Right now, the clan is divided into two factions. Qin Etian didn't hesitate to reveal the internal situation of the Qin clan to Fang Yan. One faction is the faction of benefits, and believes that this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Although the Jiang clan is also the Qin clan's opponent, the Jiang clan and the Qin clan both cooperate and oppose each other, and they have maintained this relationship for hundreds of years. It has already been proven that this relationship is beneficial to both sides. Moreover, once war breaks out with the Jiang clan, the Qin clan will also be dragged into the abyss. When two tigers fight, both tigers will suffer. Especially when the Qin family and the general family clash, the result is hard to predict. So, they felt that since they couldn't completely destroy the Jiang family, they might as well let them continue to exist. He would take this opportunity to strengthen his control over Chaoyan technology and make him the most important flag of the Qin family's industrial kingdom. In comparison, they feel that this is more secure and can maximize the benefits, just as I guessed. Fang Yan nodded. Since we can't disappear, we might as well cooperate. As long as the two big fishes don't kill each other, they can continue to devour the smaller fishes around them. Chao Yen and I belong to that small fish. Qin Etian's hands gently stirred the water and said aloud, There are also different voices at home. Some people think that Chaoyan technology can be better managed by Lu Chaoga. Moreover, although the Qin family was controlled by Chao Yen, the Rubik's Cube technology completely belonged to Lu Chaoga. If the Qin family doesn't stand on your side in this matter, it will disappoint you and Lu Chaoga. If that's the case, the Qin family might lose everything and they won't get any benefits. So, it's still in the dispute stage. Fang Yan's eyes lit up and said, Since it's still in the dispute stage, it proves that the Qin family hasn't reached an agreement with the general family yet. So, the meeting tomorrow morning is very important. Qin Etian tilted his head and looked at Fang Yan, then said, If you can convince her, the Qin family will stand on your side. If you can't, the result will be hard to predict. Fang Yan nodded and said, I will try my best. Right? I'm going to see her tomorrow. What kind of gift should I prepare? Qin Etian glanced at Fang Yan and said, First, my mom isn't old. Second, you don't need to prepare any gifts. She doesn't need anything? Fang Yan nodded and said, That's true. Women like you are really hard to deal with. Even if I want to give you a gift, I don't know what to give. No, I've already prepared something for you, Qin Etian said. I know what she likes. Fang Yen was a bit embarrassed and said, "What do you like? I'll give it to you." "I like you." Qin Yitian giggled and said, "Do you really want to give it to me? Be serious." Qin Yitian stopped laughing. She stared at Fang Yen with a burning gaze and said very seriously, "I like you. Do you really want to give it to me?" Coco prepared a sumptuous breakfast, but Fang Yen didn't have much of an appetite. Even after going through so many big battles, Fang Yen was still a bit nervous. What made him nervous was not only the power that woman controlled and the wealth that could rival a country, but also because she was Qin Yitian's mother. Qin Yitian made him nervous, but didn't his mother make him even more nervous? Not to your taste? Qin Yitian held a spoon and elegantly drank the millet porridge that was just cooked, looking at Fang Yen and asked. Coco, who was waiting on the side, became nervous and hurried forward to say, "Mr. Fang, if it's not to your taste, I'll ask the kitchen to prepare another meal. Is there anything in particular you want to eat?" No, it's already very good," Fang Yen said with a smile. He looked at Qin Yitian and said, "I'm just thinking about something." "Don't be nervous," Qin Yitian said. "I'm not very nervous either." "But you can't not be nervous," Qin Yitian said again. "Today's meeting is still very important." Fang Yen put down the bowl of porridge that he had just picked up. Was he going to let her eat or not? Qin Yin was wearing a chiffon dress, looking like a high and mighty princess. Of course, she was indeed the little princess of the Empire of Wealth. After eating a bowl of millet porridge and half a coarse bread, she looked at Fang Yen and said, "Breakfast is made according to your taste, so you'd better eat some." Fang Yen nodded and picked up the bowl again. After breakfast, Eagle Moo was waiting at the gate of the yard to greet them. Seeing Fang Yen and Qin Yitian coming out of the villa together, he didn't show the slightest surprise. Fang Yen praised in his heart. It seemed that he must have read the book, Professional Qualities of a Bodyguard. "Good morning, Mr. Fang." Eagle Moo took the initiative to greet Qin Yitian and Fang Yen. Qin Yitian nodded and took the lead to get into the luxury car. "Good morning, Eagle Moo." Fang Yen greeted Eagle Moo and followed Qin Yitian into the car. The car slowly started and drove to the old house of the Qin family. According to Qin Yitian's arrangement, Fang Yen would visit his mother there. Fang Yen and Qin Yitian had known each other for many years, but it was the first time that he had entered the old house of the Qin family. Seeing the vast mansion on the hillside, Fang Yen couldn't help but have a clearer understanding of the rich and powerful. Turning half of the mountain into one's own backyard was not something that could be done with money, right? The car drove directly into the gate and then drove to a small building on the east side. While Fang Yen was looking at the layout of the garden in the yard, Qin Yitian explained, "My mother usually lives in that small building." Fang Yen looked at the small white building. She lived in the easternmost part of the whole garden. East, south, east, west, and east were the most important. Under the warm sunlight, the small white building emitted a milky white halo. The car stopped at the door of the small building. Men and women in servants' uniforms came in and out. They moved quickly, but they didn't make any sound. Eagle Moo got out of the car and helped open the door. Fang Yen got out, and then Qin Yitian got out. Qin Yitian looked up at the balcony on the second floor of the small building and said to Fang Yen, "Come with me." Then he said to Eagle Moo, "Bring up the gifts that Fang Yen brought." Eagle Moo smiled and agreed. He followed Qin Yitian upstairs with two bodyguards in black holding several big boxes. In the middle of the living room on the second floor, a woman in a purple dress was sitting. The decoration of the living room was magnificent, but when the woman was in the golden room, she was the most dazzling color. "There is Mount Wu in Badong, and the beautiful face of a goddess." This sentence immediately came to Fang Yan's mind when he first saw the woman. This was a kind of pure beauty, domineering beauty, beauty with heavy makeup, beauty without any disguise. At the first sight of her, one would think that she was breathtakingly beautiful. The woman was looking down at the documents in her hands. The coffee on the table emitted a strong aroma. A big black cat was lying on the windowsill and basking in the sun. When it saw a stranger coming in, it squinted and turned around. The woman, the cat, the steaming coffee, the furnishings in the room, and the butterfly orchids on the balcony, it was like a harmonious and beautiful picture. The woman finally finished reading the documents in her hands. She closed the documents and took off the silver-rimmed glasses on the bridge of her nose. She looked at Qin Etian and Fang Yan and said, "Sit down. This is a gift from Fang Yan to you." Qin Etian pointed at the gift boxes in Eagle Mu's arms and said, "It must be something I like very much, right?" The woman's voice was gentle, but it had a power that was hard to ignore. "It should be." Qin Etian smiled and nodded. The woman looked at Fang Yan and said with a smile, "Thank you for your kindness." "You're welcome. It's what I should do," Fang Yan said shamelessly. "Then, what do you think you should call me?" The woman took a sip of coffee and looked at Fang Yan. Chapter 784. How should I address her? Boss? Too unskilled. Call her aunt? That sounds too old. Call her aunt? That still sounds too old. Call her sister? Then where should I put Qin Etian? Fang Yan looked at Qin Etian for help, wanting her to give him some reminders. Qin Etian acted as if she didn't see Fang Yan's eyes. She sat next to her mother, picked up the coffee pot, and poured herself a cup of coffee. The color of the coffee was black, and the aroma filled the air. Qin Etian's figure was shrouded in smoke, quickly becoming unreal. "Teacher," Fang Yan said aloud. Qin Etian spat out the coffee she just drank, then calmly took out a napkin to wipe the corner of her mouth. This girl had an elegance and calmness that didn't match her age. This wasn't a child carefully cultivated by a noble family, but rather something that came from the bones. She was very much like her mother. Li Xinyan looked at Fang Yan in surprise and said, "Teacher?" "You're my teacher," Fang Yan said with a serious expression. "You're a senior in the field of business, a role model for our lives. There are many things I need to learn from you." Li Xinyan stirred the coffee in the cup with a beautiful steel spoon, casually looked at Fang Yan, and said, "Is our relationship only limited to that of teacher and student?" Fang Yan squinted her eyes and smiled, then said, "The relationship between teacher and student is not simple. Our Hua Xia has an old saying, a teacher for a day, a father for life. Our teacher is like half a parent to us. People at that time already knew how to respect their teacher, but are people now not as polite as the ancients?" "You mean?" Li Xinyan picked up the coffee cup and took a sip, then said, "I'm half a mother to you?" "You could say that." Fang Yan nodded. "Of course, you're too young. You look like Tian's sister, plus, I was a teacher myself, so I have a special feeling for the profession. Whenever someone calls me Mr. Fang, I feel that it's my happiest moment." Li Xinyan glanced at Qin Etian and said, "Etian, I want to have a private conversation with Fang Yan." Qin Etian nodded and stood up with the coffee cup in his hand. "I'm going downstairs to look at the pigeons." With that, she turned and walked out of the door. After Qin Etian left, Li Xinyan looked at Fang Yan and said, "Teacher, a teacher for a day, a father for life, I quite like this title." "Thank you." Fang Yan nodded and said, "There's an old saying in Hua Xia, a son-in-law has half a son. Fang Yan, you've been a teacher before, so you should be familiar with this saying, right?" "I'm not a stranger." Fang Yan's expression became solemn. After Qin Etian left, it meant that the negotiation between him and Li Xinyan had entered the real stage. But what profound meaning did she have when she said that? "Fang Yan, why should I help you?" Li Xinyan looked at Fang Yan and suddenly changed the topic. "Why should I help you?" This was a very simple question, but it was also a very difficult one. Fang Yan and the Qin family were comrades and partners. Chao Yan's interests were everyone's interests. The Jiang family attacking Chao Yan was the same as attacking the Qin family. Wasn't this a reason for the Qin family to help? However, if the Qin family stood by and did nothing, they could reap greater benefits. The Jiang family dared to attack Fang Yan and Chao Yan technology, but they didn't dare to start a war with the Qin family at the same time. These giant families were deeply rooted and intertwined with each other. There was me in you and you in me. It was very difficult to completely separate them. Moreover, she asked why I should help you. Fang Yan watched as Li Xinyan stirred the coffee cup with a steel spoon, and after a moment of silence, he said, How many spoonfuls of sugar do you want to add to your coffee? Half a spoonful of sugar and half a spoonful of milk. Li Xinyan looked at Fang Yen and answered aloud. I'm the half a spoonful of sugar that you want to add to your coffee. Fang Yen said with a smile. Even if you don't add that half a spoonful of sugar, a slightly bitter coffee can still be drunk. However, if you add this half a spoonful of sugar and half a spoonful of milk, it will be easier to drink, and you can also enjoy the process. Are you trying to convince me? Li Xinyan looked at Fang Yen with bright eyes and asked. Fang Yen nodded. A person like you doesn't lack anything, and you also have everything. You can be compassionate to all living beings, or you can be high and mighty and not care about anything. However, having reached such a position, all you think and do is to ask for peace of mind, right? Are you comparing me to Guan Yin Bodhisattva? The woman said with a smile. I'm just an ordinary woman, not an otherworldly goddess like you're talking about. Don't think about putting me on a pedestal and making me unable to step down. What you're after isn't just material, but spiritual satisfaction. I can't use benefits to convince you, because the Jiang family can give you greater benefits. We can only give you 1/3 of Chaoyan technology, but the Jiang family can give you the entire Chaoyan technology. It's not their thing anyway. I can't use emotions to persuade you either. Qin Etian is my student, and I used to be Qin Etian's teacher. Because of this relationship, I have such a relationship with the Qin family. However, I can't use the relationship between me and Qin Etian to ask you to do this. If I do that, then our relationship will have deteriorated. Li Xinyan pursed her lips and smiled. You think I'm doing this to fulfill my spiritual satisfaction? Is that right? So I'm going to lead the Qin family to contend against a century-old family like the Jiang family? Fang Yen said frankly, it's like this. Also, our character is worthy of your trust. Character? You don't lack capable people, but you lack trustworthy people. I'm sure you know very well that Chaoyan technology can only be maximized in the hands of me and Lu Chaoga. But the Jiang family promised that as long as we remain silent on this matter, we'll be able to gain control of the entire Chaoyan technology. Being generous at the expense of others, I'm better than him at this kind of thing. How about you think about it, we'll get rid of the Jiang family together, and then give the entire Jiang family to you. See, isn't it even more tempting to speak like this? The Jiang family is worth a lot more than Chaoyan technology, right? Li Xinyan looked at Fang Yen with a serious expression. Her beautiful eyes had the power to move one's soul. Fang Yen, I'm a businessman, and the most important thing for a businessman is profit. Don't use personal feelings and spiritual pursuit to negotiate with me. That makes me feel like it's child's play. I'm sorry. Fang Yen apologized sincerely. Just as I said, compared to what the Jiang family can give you, I don't have any benefits that can move you. In some aspects, we're naturally at a disadvantage, because we're a part of the benefits. However, in some aspects, you also have an advantage that others can't compare to. What aspect? My daughter likes you. Teacher Li, I don't want to use my relationship with Etian to ask you to do such a thing. This isn't about borrowing $1 million or $2 million, nor is it about buying or selling a house. It's about the struggle between the Qin family and the Jiang family. If you do this because of Etian, it will put you and the Qin family in a difficult position, and it will also put Etian in a difficult position in the Qin family. After a pause, Fang Yen said in a low voice, I hope that I have some value as a person, enough for you to be willing to do something for me, and I will remember this help. A drop of water will be returned with a spring of water. Fang Yen said this with sincerity, but Li Xinyan still shook his head. Fang Yen, I'm a businessman and also a mother. As a businessman, I value the benefits that I can get. As a mother, I want to see my daughter live a happy life. If you become my son-in-law, wouldn't it be natural for a mother-in-law to help her son-in-law? At that time, no one inside or outside the family would dare to make any sarcastic remarks. Even if it's the Jiang family, if you become my son-in-law, would they really dare to bully you like this? Teacher Li, Fang Yen called out in surprise. He didn't expect Li Xinyan to make such a request, and even more so, he didn't expect Li Xinyan to say it so directly. She had never seen him before, so how could she be at ease, willing to hand over her daughter to him? Everything happened so suddenly that Fang Yan's mind instantly changed. Teacher Li, you still don't know me well enough. This is the first time we've met. How can you be at ease to hand over your daughter to me? I believe in Yi Tian's judgment, Li Xinyan said. She's very much like me when I was young. When I set my sights on someone, I wouldn't be too far off. Back then, she suggested me to invest in Chaoyan technology and I listened. Look now, how many people outside are envious of my investment judgment back then? But this kind of thing can't be forced. Yi Tian and I, Fang Yan clenched his teeth and said, are just normal teacher-student relationships. She's my student, and also my friend. I can't use this kind of thing to make a deal. Li Xinyan thoughtfully looked at Fang Yan and said, Fang Yan, has your head been bitten by a pig before? Was she scolding him? Or was she hit by the car door when she got off the car? She was indeed scolding him. How could she scold him so casually? If not, why would you reject my proposal? Li Xinyan sneered. Could it be that you think, my daughter isn't good enough for you? Chapter 785. In the hearts of all parents, their children are the smartest, the prettiest, the most filial, and the most sensible. We often see uncles and aunties complaining about their children while chatting with their neighbors, but if the onlookers nodded in agreement or accidentally dozed off, a fierce battle is inevitable. Let's not talk about Qin Etienne's own excellence, just his excellence in the eyes of his parents has reached an astonishing level. For example, if Qin Etienne could get 100 points, in the hearts of his parents, it would be 1,000 points. If Qin Etienne could get 1,000 points, in the hearts of Li Xinyan, it would be 10,000 points or even 1,000,000 points. Any successful person is extremely proud. Li Xinyan just said that Qin Etienne is like him when he was young. Then, is the young me not worthy of the current Fang Yan? Fang Yan's rejection not only denied Qin Etienne, but also denied the young Li Xinyan. This is an insult that is more unacceptable than death. Therefore, Li Xinyan didn't care about his feelings and directly asked Fang Yan if his daughter is not worthy of him. I didn't mean that, Fang Yan said with some embarrassment. Just like his grandfather Fang Hui said, his IQ is very high, but his EQ is really a problem. Especially when it comes to love between men and women, his way of solving the problem becomes childish and clumsy. Qin Etienne is very good, I am not worthy of her, huh? The sneer on Li Xinyan's face became more obvious and said, she is a good person, so I am not worthy of her? This kind of rejection is indeed more advanced, and it sounds more comfortable. I have a girlfriend. Fang Yan looked at Li Xinyan and said, there is no need to hide this kind of thing, and it can't be hidden. Fang Yan already has an emotional entanglement with Lu Chaoge. If he and Qin Etienne, why is it so troublesome? He just wanted to keep his life. He just wanted to live well. Why did it have to involve so many painful and tangled things? He didn't want to hurt Yi Rou, he didn't want to hurt Lu Chaoge, and he definitely didn't want to hurt Qin Etienne. But the way things went, he had hurt everyone. Fang Yan was a kind person. He had the craftiness and boldness of an ancient martial arts family. He had also inherited the versatility of his mother's scholarly family. He was smart, two-faced, vengeful, and merciless. However, he also bemoaned the state of the universe and pitied the fate of mankind. He was willing to fight and die for his country and people. Most importantly, the Fang family was sparsely populated, with only one heir for several generations. Other than the elders in his family who took care of him, there were only Li Xiaotian and Ruan Qian, a group of companions of similar age from Swallow Dock, and the two juniors, Fang Yingying and Fang Haohan, accompanying him. He regarded them as his family, as his brothers. His mother, Lu Wan, often taught him to be kind to those who truly loved him, so he was filial to his grandfather, loved his parents, and tried his best to take care of and protect everyone around him. Even when he was teaching in Huaqing and saw Lu Chaoge being bullied, he couldn't help but help her. However, because of Lu Chaoge's betrayal, his enthusiasm was met with a cold current. The relationship between the two instantly fell to the freezing point. However, because of Lu Chaoge's efforts to save him, coupled with the interests of Chaoyan technology, they restored their normal friendship. If Lu Chaoge hadn't betrayed him that time, What would their relationship be like? Would they have become an enviable immortal couple? However, there were no ifs in this world. He met Yi Ro, and he also fell in love with her. Yi Ro also loved him, and they became lovers who had a mutual affinity. Things had gone in a big circle, and in the end, it was about his relationship with Lu Xiaoge. Lu Xiaoge became his woman. He already had Yi Ro, and he had a relationship with Lu Xiaoge. It was already very annoying. Before he had time to solve it, the Jiang family's attack came like a flood. Qin Yitian wanted to marry me? It had to be said that this was a request that no man in the world could refuse. The first beauty of Yan Jing, the most outstanding investor of the younger generation of Huaxia, one of the controllers of the Qin family's large industry, and the most favorable candidate for the future heir of the family, marrying such a woman, wasn't this something that all men dreamt of? With Qin Yitian's ability and the Qin family's wealth, even if Fang Yan slept on a pile of money in the future, it was very likely that he would be crushed to death by a large amount of money. Besides, Fang Yan was not the kind of boy toy that people said. He was also capable, and he had his own pursuit of martial arts. If Fang Yan married Qin Yitian would earn money to support the family, and Fang Yan would be responsible for being as beautiful as a flower, climbing the heavenly law. He didn't have to deal with his own affairs, because everything could be handled by Qin Yitian. He didn't have to deal with countless enemies, because no one dared to offend the son-in-law of the Qin family. He could focus on martial arts, seek the way, and polish his heart of Tai Chi. How could he refuse such a life? However, he already had Yi Ro. He had met Yi Ro. So, the only thing he could do was to refuse. I have a girlfriend. Fang Yan looked at Li Xinyan and said. He repeated again. I love her very much, and she loves me very much. Is it Yi Ro from the Yi family? Li Xinyan asked aloud. Fang Yan nodded and said, It's Yi Ro from the Yi family. We promised to marry each other, so I can't accept your kindness. Qin Yitian is very outstanding, and Qin Yitian is the most beautiful girl I've ever seen. However, I can't accept her love anymore. This makes me very grateful, but also very guilty. Could it be that in your heart, my daughter is not as good as the daughter of the Yi family? There's no way to compare this. Fang Yan said with a serious face. I met Yi Ro first. So, I can only choose Yi Ro. Yi Tian is very outstanding, and so is Wen Ro. They are both very outstanding girls. However, since I've already fallen in love with Yi Ro, how can I fall in love with Qin Yitian? If I really accept your request, won't you doubt my sincerity? Li Xinyan put down the already cold coffee cup and said, I do have this worry. If you immediately agree to my request, I will find a way to destroy your relationship with Yi Tian, and even help the Jiang family destroy you. A woman's heart is the most poisonous. Just a moment ago, we were just having a nice chat over tea, but one careless word and will be destroyed by this extremely beautiful woman. There's really no sense of security when dealing with people from big families. But you refused. Li Xinyan looked at Fang Yan with a smile and said, You refused. I can see your sincerity, I can see your feelings for Yi Ro. Of course, I can also see your feelings for Yi Tian. Fang Yan was shocked and said, Yi Tian and I are only friends. I think of her as, student? Sister? Friend? Li Xinyan chuckled and said, Which man in this world wouldn't be moved by a girl like Yi Tian? Some people are cowardly and incompetent, so much so that even looking at her is blasphemy. Some people feel ashamed and don't dare to take another step closer. There are also a few decent pursuers with good character and family backgrounds, but Yi Tian herself doesn't like them. To tell you the truth, back then, the Qin family and the Jiang family did indeed have plans to unite by marriage. The Jiang family's Jiang Junling is excellent in every aspect and has a good reputation. What's rare is that he's infatuated with Yi Tian, so we wanted to bring the two of them together. That way, when the Qin and Jiang families cooperate, it would change the entire business landscape of Huaxia. But Jiang Junling was defeated by you, and Yi Tian fell in love with you. If that's the case, as a mother, I can only help my own daughter. In love, a woman must maintain her composure. But, as a mother, I don't have to do that. Li Xinyan looked at Fang Yan and said, Fang Yan, if you refuse me, I'll also refuse you. If you accept my goodwill, I'll accept your sincerity. How about it? You can't make a deal with this kind of thing, Fang Yen said painfully. If I say it's possible, then it's possible, Li Xinyan said with a cold expression. What's your answer? Fang Yen got up from his chair, slightly bowed to Li Xinyan and said, It's my honor to be able to meet Teacher Li today. I hope I'll have the chance to visit again in the future. Saying so, Fang Yen turned around and walked outside. Li Xinyan looked at Fang Yan's back for a long time, then softly said, What a man with a backbone. Qin Yitan walked out from the dark curtain with a pigeon cage in his hand, looked at Li Xinyan and said, Xiao Bai is getting thinner and thinner. Is it because her appetite hasn't been good lately? Don't give her too much food. Once she's full, she won't want to move anymore. Qin Yitan sat down next to his mother, looked at her and said, Why do you have to force him like this? You know it's going to be like this. Li Xinyan looked at Qin Yitan and asked, If I didn't force him like this, do you think you'd have any hope? No, Qin Yitan said very honestly. He made it very clear that the first person he met was Yi Rou. If that's the case, what's the point of me forcing him or not? We're still friends. Qin Yitan said with a smile. Even if you like a man, you don't have to be together. That's what ordinary women think. Li Xinyan said with a firm voice. The man my daughter likes, I must be with them. I don't want you to be alone. I don't want you to suffer any grievances. Because you're my daughter. Whether in business or in love, we never compromise. Chapter 786. The negotiation was not successful, so Fang Yen was still in a heavy mood. He couldn't go back for the time being. At least, he needed to make some efforts. It was still early, so Fang Yen didn't go back to Qin Yitan's villa directly. When Fang Yen went downstairs, Mu Ying was already waiting for him at the door. Fang Yen asked Mu Ying to walk him to the door of the red wall. Mu Ying didn't ask any questions and nodded. In the luxury car, Fang Yen sat in the back seat, thinking about something. This result was somewhat out of Fang Yan's expectation. He had thought that the woman of the Qin family would agree to help. After all, she was a smart person and knew what choice was best for the Qin family. Of course, he had also thought that the woman would refuse. The Jiang family had already offered them such great benefits, and the voices within the Qin family were so strong. If they didn't want to shed all pretense of cordiality with the Jiang family, or didn't want to enter a vicious battle of life and death with the Jiang family, then she would refuse without hesitation. However, he didn't expect that Li Xinyan would propose such a deal. It sounded ridiculous, and it didn't sound like something a woman of her level would do. The marriage with Qin Yitan was indeed beneficial to Fang Yen, and it could solve the dilemma between Fang Yen and the Jiang family. It sounded tempting. However, since Fang Yen already had Yi Rou and had to be responsible for Lu Chaoge, how could he dare to mess with the little princess of the Qin family? If he agreed to the marriage with the Qin family, with the power of the Qin family and the shrewdness of Li Xinyan, they would never allow him to have any relationship with Yi Rou or Lu Chaoge. In that case, he would have to completely cut off contact with the two women. Fang Yen couldn't do that. Fang Yen didn't want to pay such a price. Besides, she said she liked Qin Yian. Fang Yen thought about it in his heart. Could it be that he had really shown something? Could it be that he didn't understand his own heart? Qin Yitan. He chewed on this majestic and domineering name, but his heart was rippling with layers of bitterness. If that devilishly intelligent girl knew the truth of today's negotiation, what would he do? Everyone lived such a difficult life. Eagle Mu gazed at Fang Yen for a long while and then sighed deeply. I told you before that the Jiang family stance is my stance. However, in my heart, I actually hope that you can cooperate with the Qin family successfully. Fang Yen squinted his eyes and smiled. He looked at Mu Ying's handsome face and said, Thank you. No matter what, we are friends. Mu Ying nodded and said, Even when I need to attack you, we are still friends. Fang Yen laughed and said, Yes, even if you need to attack me, we will still be friends. But I hope that such a day will never come. Because that would kill people. I don't want to die, and I don't want you to die. I don't want to die, and I don't want you to die. Mu Ying echoed Fang Yan's words. His eyes were deep and enchanting as he said, Will that day really come? Fang Yen didn't answer Mu Ying's question. Instead, he looked at Mu Ying with great interest and asked, "Are you very close to the Qin family?" "I grew up in the Qin family." Mu Ying smiled and said, "Your surname is Mu. The Qin family has a talent program. Every year, they collect talents from within the family or from all over the world for special training. I should be considered a talent in martial arts, so I became the young lady's bodyguard and chauffeur." Mu Ying's words were simple and perfunctory. It wasn't that he wanted to hide anything from Fang Yen. Instead, every big family had some core secrets. Who knew if Fang Yen was trying to find out the truth of the Qin family by asking him such a question? Fang Yen nodded and said, "It's good to have money. You can do a lot of things with it." Mu Ying smiled and said, "You are also very rich. Madam rarely praises people, but I have heard Chao Yan's name many times from her mouth. If I only have money but no power, my money will still be robbed by bandits. What I need now is power," Fang Yen said seriously. The car stopped some distance away from the red wall. Mu Ying had brought Qin Etienne's car. Special cars like theirs were all registered with the relevant departments of the country. Therefore, they didn't want the relevant departments to read too much about their arrival. Fang Yen got out of the car and told Mu Ying to go back. Mu Ying didn't leave until Fang Yan's figure was far away. Fang Yen had become a member of the Xian department, so it wasn't too difficult for him to enter and exit the red wall. Facing the breeze and the warm sun, he entered the first gate and strode to the arch bridge that led to the central island. This bridge led to the center of Hua Xia's power. It was usually not open to the outside world. Except for government officials or some special people, ordinary people couldn't set foot on this bridge. In other words, anyone who could set foot on this bridge was not an ordinary person. When he thought of this, his depressed mood was slightly relieved. "I'm not an ordinary person." As Fang Yen quickly walked forward, he heard the sound of a car behind him. Fang Yen quickly stepped to the side and waited for the car to pass by him. Unexpectedly, the black car with a red flag stopped next to Fang Yen. The window of the back seat rolled down. A square-faced man looked at Fang Yen. "Fang Yen," the square-faced man asked in a low voice. Although he was wearing glasses, it couldn't hide the sharpness in his eyes. Fang Yen was secretly on guard. He could feel that this man was very hostile towards him. "It's me," Fang Yen said. "You are?" "Jiang Yunong," the square-faced man said. Fang Yen immediately understood. So he was from the Jiang family. The Jiang family was hostile towards him and wanted nothing more than to kill him. However, when the Jiang family was about to crush him, an important person from the Jiang family stopped to greet him. What was the reason? "It's not convenient to talk here. If you don't mind, I can give you a ride," Jiang Yunong said expressionlessly. Fang Yen thought for a bit, then opened the door to the back seat and got in. Fang Yen sat next to Jiang Yunong, and he could feel the imposing aura of authority from Jiang Yunong. Jiang Yunong was also looking at Fang Yen and said, "Hearing about you is not as good as seeing you in person. You really are a young hero. Thank you." Fang Yan's thanks were not sincere at all. It said that the Jiang family is strict and has many heroes. I've also admired it for a long time. The sharpness in Jiang Yunong's eyes disappeared. The corner of his mouth had a faint smile and said, "If it's someone else saying this, we can listen to it half truthfully and half falsely. But when these words come from your mouth, there is not the slightest hint of admiration in them. The General Ling was banished from his home because of you, and the General Xing has suffered several times in a row because of you. Even my own younger brother died at your hands." Fang Yen hurriedly denied it, saying, "You can't say something like that without any evidence." The general's order was his own sin. He had courted his own death. The Jiang family had great ambitions but little talent. They only wanted to prove their abilities, but the more they tried, the more useless they became. As for your brother, I don't even know who your brother is, so how can you say that I killed your brother? Fortunately, I didn't record it. If I did, I would be able to sue you for slander based on what you said just now." Jiang Yunong smiled and said, "If I needed to send you to prison, I would need evidence for those things. I don't need to do that, so I don't need evidence for a lot of things. I understand your style and means of doing things." Fang Yen said with a smile. "When you don't want to use the law to solve problems, it proves that you want to use violence to solve problems privately. These are both things you are good at. Fang Yan, you didn't have a good talk with the Qin family, did you? How is that possible? Fang Yan retorted with a sneer. If you have a spy in the Qin family, you should know that Teacher Li specially invited me to have breakfast and coffee with her this morning. Oh yes, I call her Teacher Li because I was a teacher in the past, so I feel very close to her identity as a teacher. We had a good talk and chatted for more than an hour. Originally, she wanted me to stay for lunch, but I received an emergency call, so I had to end it early. However, Teacher Li still asked Mu Ying, the bodyguard of the Qin family, to drive me here personally. Didn't you see Mu Ying's car just now? So it seems that your negotiation has been successful? The ridicule on Jiang Yunong's face was very obvious. Of course. Fang Yan was like a dead pig that was not afraid of boiling water. He completely ignored Jiang Yunong's expression and said, "The Jiang family will face the joint attack of me and the Qin family." Jiang Yunong pushed up the glasses on the bridge of his nose and said, "Fang Yan, I finally understand why you can succeed. A person like you is indeed very likable. When we first met, I felt that you were very different from other people. You have a spirit." There was a rebellious spirit in him. No matter who the opponent is, no matter what kind of situation you face, you can fight back shamelessly. This time, I really want to thank you for your appreciation of me, Fang Yan said with a smile. If it wasn't for this spirit, I would have been trampled to death by Jiang Junling a long time ago. I would have become a pile of mud, a pile of weeds. I would still be Fang Yan, but no one would know who Fang Yan is. But are you ready? Are you ready for a bigger storm? I study Tai Chi, and there is a saying in the core theory of Tai Chi that I think is very reasonable. Now, I will take it out and encourage you. If he is strong, let him be strong. I will *CK your mother. Chapter 787. Let him be strong, I'll *CK your mother. This was a very undignified curse. Fang Yan was a descendant of an ancient martial arts family and could be considered a real martial artist. However, he also inherited his mother Lu Wan's scholarly family's etiquette. He rarely cursed when he was with people, and he rarely said anything that hurt people's self-esteem, unless he especially hated people. Those who said things like *CK and lousy would never become the main characters in reality or novels. They were just villains who were stepped on by others. However, the Jiang family's fierce attacks wave after wave, Li Ya's disappearance and Du Qing's imprisonment, the result of the negotiations with the Jiang family, and the messy relationship with Yi Rou, Lu Chaoge and even Qin Yitian, caused his anger to rise, and finally caused him to lose control of his emotions. He was really annoyed. To compete with a giant like the Jiang family, it was not possible to win by being good at scheming. It was a competition of resources, connections, capital operation, hundreds of responses at a single call, and hundreds of years of heritage. Moreover, the Jiang family could casually enter and exit the Red Wall, which could also bring pressure to Fang Yan. Whoever he came to meet, that person might stand behind the Jiang family and become their strong support. Fang Yan, even if he was a genius with extraordinary intelligence, he was still a young man in his 20s. He had no family to rely on, no elders to consult, and had to bear all the heavy responsibilities by himself. He would also feel annoyed and tired. He even often thought that it would be better if nothing had happened, and that he was just an ordinary young man from Swallow Dock or a slightly talented Rosefinch secondary language teacher. He liked that kind of life, and also yearned for that kind of life. The many days of suppressed emotions finally exploded in the face of Jiang Yunong's aggressiveness. The Jiang family was the root cause of all this. He hated them to the core. Click! A black handgun's safety was pulled, and the pitch-black muzzle was aimed at Fang Yan's head. It was the bodyguard in the passenger seat, a young man who looked quiet but had a pair of blood-red eyes when he was angry. His hand holding the gun was very steady. Even when the car was moving, it did not shake at all. It seemed that his marksmanship must be very good. "You deserve to die," the man in the black suit said fiercely. "Shoot!" Fang Yan moved his head closer to the muzzle of the gun. His voice was cold, and there was a mocking smile on his face. "Shoot!" The man in black's knuckles twitched, and his eyes turned even redder. His fingers exerted a little more force, and with just a little more force, he could pull the trigger. "Shoot me." Fang Yen stared into the eyes of the man in black. He seemed to be crazy, but he kept his voice very low. "Doesn't your Jiang family hate me? Haven't your Jiang clan tried to kill me time and time again? Shoot here. If you pull the trigger, I'll die in front of you." The man in black licked his lips as if he had made a final decision. "Shoot me," Fang Yen screamed. "Why don't you King shoot? I want you to die." The man in black gritted his teeth. "Stop," Jiang Yunong finally spoke. Screech. The man in black put away his gun and turned around. He stared at Fang Yen through the rearview mirror like a vicious wolf staring at its prey. "Coward," Fang Yen sneered and spat at the man in black. The veins on the man's forehead were popping out as if he was about to explode. "Jiang Yunong, don't fall for it," Jiang Yunong reminded him. The man in black looked up to see that the car they were in had already entered the red wall. If he had shot Fang Yen just now, the Jiang family would have suffered a devastating blow. No one could bear the consequences of shooting someone in a place like this, even if the person behind him was the Jiang family. If he couldn't kill, then he wouldn't look. The man in black turned his eyes away to avoid looking at Fang Yen. This was a mad dog. A mad dog that had been driven mad. Why should I stoop to the level of a mad dog? What's the point of killing a mad dog? I'll kill him eventually, but not now, not here. Without the boss' permission, the driver didn't drive the car into the red wall to verify it, but instead drove the car into the parking lot on the side. Jiang Yunong looked at Fang Yen and said, "You're angry. Feeling the pressure?" "Yeah. I'm feeling a lot of pressure. Can't you say, 'fuck you' again?" The muscles on Jiang Yunong's face twitched as he said, "I used to think that you were an opponent worthy of respect. Now you think that I'm a stepfather worthy of respect?" "Fang Yen, you're angry, you feel the pressure? Tell me, aren't you being a jerk? I didn't offend anyone, yet you invited me into the car. You don't dare to kill me, you don't want to scold me, yet you want to threaten me. Tell me, aren't you being a jerk?" "Fang Yen, the victory of words, I fuck your mother. From now on, every word you say, I'll reply with, I fuck your mother. Do you want to keep talking?" "Seems like you're not in the mood," Fang Yen said. "I fuck your mother. Get out." "Okay." Fang Yen opened the door and got out. "I fuck you." Before Fang Yen could finish, the car spat out a puff of smoke and fled. "Mom," Fang Yen shouted at the rear of the car. After thinking for a bit, he slapped himself. "Don't swear," Fang Yen told himself. Fang Yen came to visit Gong Sun Chi. The last time they went on a mission together in the Millennium Palace, they were chased by countless death warriors from the Millennium Palace. In that forest, Fang Yen and Gong Sun Chi supported and helped each other. They didn't abandon or give up. Although they were heavily injured, they still worked hand in hand and escaped from death, preventing the national treasure from being lost to the foreign land. As for why Hua Xia had a treasure like the sacrificial staff, it wasn't something that Fang Yen and Gong Sun Chi needed to think about. In any case, this was what Fang Yen reported to the young chief of the Xian department after he returned. The young chief expressed high praise for Fang Yen and Gong Sun Chi's mission, saying that they were the cornerstones of Hua Xia. Fang Yen was very humble. He said that he had only done what he was supposed to do. Any Chinese would have done the same thing if they were in his position. Fang Yen didn't report to the young chief that Fang Yen carried Gong Sun Chi out of the forest of death because of his heavy injuries. However, everyone knew that it was Fang Yen who carried Gong Sun Chi out of the forest of death. This was because when Fang Yen rushed to the meeting point of the Xian department, he ran with Gong Sun Chi on his back. Although Gong Sun Chi repeatedly resisted and expressed his desire to walk alone, the young chief thought highly of Fang Yen. The young chief thought highly of Fang Yen, who did not strive for credit and was not arrogant, and did not give up on his teammates in times of danger. He was willing to live and die with his teammates. He gave Fang Yen a huge reward on the spot and asked Fang Yen to write down his private number. He said that if Fang Yen had time, he could go to his place for tea. What a good young chief! When Fang Yen arrived at the small courtyard where Gong Sun Chi lived, Gong Sun Chi was practicing walking with the help of a crutch. His right leg had been shot while he was fleeing, and the bone inside was injured. However, his physique was strong. After a period of rest, his body was much better. It was just that the injury on the bone was more troublesome. If he wanted to recover as soon as possible, he still needed some tentative training. Seeing Fang Yen coming over, Gong Sun Chi swung the crutch in his hand and smashed it at him. "Pa?" Fang Yen caught the crutch and said with a smile, "Is this how you treat your savior?" "Savior?" Gong Sun Chi sneered and said, "I might as well have died in the forest. At least I wouldn't have to come back to be humiliated like this." "Who humiliated you?" Fang Yen asked in surprise. Someone even dared to humiliate the disciple of the dragon god? Wasn't he afraid that the dragon god would break his arms and legs? "You still have the face to ask." Gong Sun Chi wanted to take out his crutch and hit him again. He shouted, "Of course it was you who humiliated me." "How did I humiliate you? The whole world knows that you carried me back. Although no one asked me about it, the way they looked at me, they were laughing at me." "How could that be?" Fang Yen looked very troubled. "This matter was so secretive that I didn't tell anyone. I didn't even mention it to the young chief. When he asked about your performance, I said that you were braver than I was, and that you knew how to give up. What do you mean I was braver than you?" Gong Sun Chi rudely interrupted Fang Yen and said, "What do you mean by that? Aren't you just trying to tell others that I was brave enough to let myself fall into a coma? What did I give up? That I almost gave up my life?" "You can't think like that," Fang Yen comforted him. "If you really want to think like that, there's nothing I can do." "Fang Yen, you tricked me. If I tricked you, I would have left you in the forest of death and let those rabid dogs drag you back to be cremated." Gong Sun Chi's eyes were about to turn red. He choked and said, "When you carried me out of the forest, I had already regained some of my consciousness. I told you to put me down and only need to support me as I walked. Why did you have to carry me? How humiliating was it for me to be seen by those people who came to rescue me?" Fang Yen thought about it seriously and said, "If there's a next time, I'll definitely help you out." Chapter 788. Gong Sun Chi's lame leg was about to recover from his anger. He pointed at Fang Yen and said, "You want to do it again? Next time, I won't go on a mission with you no matter what. You're too treacherous, I'll be screwed to death by you." "Why would I?" Fang Yen said with a smile. "This time, we went into such a dangerous situation together, but didn't we still come back alive together? We brothers stood shoulder to shoulder and leaned against each other's backs. We've already established a deep revolutionary friendship. Next time, I promise I won't screw you over. If you get injured and faint again, I'll definitely wait for you to wake up and bring you out to meet up with the others. Why am I the one who gets injured and faints every time? Why can't I carry you out when you get injured and faint?" You must not have watched Dwelling Snail, right? There's a handsome uncle who says something like this: "Everyone should do what they're good at. Fainting is what you're good at, carrying people is what I'm good at. Leave, I don't welcome you here." Gong Sun Chi hurriedly waved his hand. He couldn't beat Fang Yen in a fight, nor could he win an argument against Fang Yen. He was worried that he would be angered to death by Fang Yen. Fang Yen didn't leave. He sat down on a chair under the eaves of the corridor and looked at Gong Sun Chi. "Continue practicing, I'll leave after a while." Gong Sun Chi stood in the courtyard for a few seconds, then leaned on his cane and sat next to Fang Yen. Looking at Fang Yan's gloomy face, he asked, "The Jiang family made a move against you? You know about this?" Fang Yen looked at Gong Sun Chi in confusion and asked. Gong Sun Chi sneered and said, "Before you even entered the Xian department, I already thoroughly investigated your background. You offended the Jiang family, offended such a rich and noble family. At that time, I wanted to see how you would die. I didn't think that you would be able to survive until now. It's quite a miracle." Knowing this, Fang Yen narrowed his eyes and smiled. "If I say yes, that the Jiang family has forced me into a dead end, that my current life is unbearable, and that I could step into the void at any moment and be doomed forever, would that make you feel better?" Gong Sun Chi nodded without hesitation. "However, I owe you my life," Gong Sun Chi said with a serious expression. I owe you my life." Gong Sun Chi avoided Fang Yan's scrutinizing gaze. His handsome face was actually a little red. Saying such words made him, who was so proud and arrogant, feel really embarrassed. Although I don't like the way you handled it, it's a fact that can't be changed. If you didn't carry me out of the forest of death, I would be dead now. Maybe the blood in his body was sucked dry by the locusts. I won't. Fang Yan comforted her in a low voice. Your corpse will be carried back by the Millennium Palace's priests for cremation. This is their custom. When in Rome, do as the Romans do. Seeing Gong Sun Chi's fierce gaze, Fang Yan cupped his hands and said, Continue to be sentimental. To be honest, I quite like how sentimental you are, that's all. Fang Yan was a little disappointed. Pay your debt, pay your life. Since the context was destroyed, Gong Sun Chi couldn't say such sentimental words anymore. He coldly stared at Fang Yan and said, I owe you my life, so I will pay you back. If the Jiang family kills you, then I will kill someone from the Jiang family for you. Tell me, who do you want me to kill? Really? Fang Yan's eyes were seeing stars. Really? Gong Sun Chi nodded without hesitation. He had thought about this for a long time. Although it was against the rules, who asked his life to be saved by someone else? A man should be this righteous and unyielding. You won't lie to me, right? A man will do what he says. That's great. Can you help me stab that old man Jiang Shifu to death? That old man is too pretentious, I can't get along with him. The dumplings he makes are so disgusting, I almost died from the saltiness. Gong Sun Chi's face twitched, looking like he was in a lot of pain. Is there a problem? There is a problem. What problem? I can't kill Jiang Shifu, Gong Sun Chi said. Even my Shifu can't kill him. If he didn't provoke my Shifu can't even touch him. Why? Because he's a Jiang Shifu. You're not a man. Fang Yan said. You didn't do what you said either. You told me to kill Jiang Shifu, that's right. You said it yourself just now that I saved your life, so your life is mine. I want to kill the general and cherish the blessings of the future. If I had 2 lives, I would use one to kill Jiang Shifu. Now that I have 2 lives, I'm going to use your life to kill Jiang Shifu. Gong Sun Chi painfully closed his eyes. He felt that if he continued like this, he would be too ashamed to show his face. He wanted nothing more than to find a hole in the ground to hide in. He said, I can't kill Jiang Shifu for you, but I, Gong Sun Chi, will never go back on my words. Whoever kills you, I will kill them. Fang Yan thought for a bit, then asked, What if I don't die? Then I won't have to kill anyone. Your way of repaying a debt of gratitude is too shoddy. Fang Yan said angrily. How about I tell you who will kill me and you kill him first? What if you say Jiang Shifu again? I won't. I know the difficulty and consequences of killing him. Why don't you go kill Jiang Shi? Looks like that won't work either. Fang Yan stood up and said, Rest well. I'm going back. Gong Sun Chi looked at Fang Yan's back. Seeing that he was about to step out of his courtyard, he said, I'll try. Fang Yan waved his hand at Gong Sun Chi, then stepped out of the courtyard, leaving Gong Sun Chi with a tall and mysterious figure. Did he really believe me? Gong Sun Chi muttered to himself. After leaving Gong Sun Chi's courtyard for a long time, Fang Yan couldn't help but laugh out loud. Gong Sun Chi, this guy, can be quite cute sometimes. If Gong Sun Chi could really help him kill Jiang Shi, then it would be a pleasant surprise for me. Even if the Jiang clan were furious, they would still blame it on Gong Sun Chi, or even the Dragon God's life. Fang Yan was really looking forward to the glorious battle between the Dragon God and the Jiang clan. What's there to be happy about? An old voice suddenly sounded by his ear. When Fang Yan looked up, an old man wearing a gray robe was slowly walking towards him. When Fang Yan saw him, he was already at the end of the path. When Fang Yan saw him clearly, he was already standing in front of Fang Yan. It looked like the Taoist's distance reduction. Speak of the devil. He had just remembered the battle between the Dragon God and the Jiang clan, and in the blink of an eye, Koming was already standing in front of him. Koming was still as skinny as before. His clear eyes looked at Fang Yan and asked, What's so happy about? Fang Yan looked at this legendary figure of the Jianghu and said, I just thought of something interesting. Coming naturally wouldn't believe Fang Yan's nonsense. After hearing Fang Yan's answer, his face showed no expression and said, "You came out from Gong Sun Chi's place?" Fang Yan nodded. "No matter what, Gong Sun Chi is my comrade. He used to be. He's injured, so it's only right for me to come and see him." "What do you want?" Coming asked as he looked at Fang Yan. "What do you want? You think I came to see Gong Sun Chi because I have an ulterior motive?" Fang Yan sneered. "If that's the case, why did I take such a big risk to carry him back in the forest of death? Wouldn't it be safer and smoother for me to escape alone? I don't believe you have any good intentions toward Gong Sun Chi," Coming said directly. "Of course, I don't care if you have good intentions or not. I can spoil you, but I can also destroy you." Fang Yan looked at him coldly and said, "I don't care if you spoil me or want to destroy me, because one day, I will destroy you." There was a glimmer of light in Coming's eyes. It wasn't fear, nor anger, but excitement. This reaction made Fang Yan a little angry. This old thing seems to lack opponents. "Unfortunately, your state is too low." A glimmer flashed in Coming's eyes, and then he shook his head regretfully. "The most unforgettable battle in life is when I competed with Mo Qingdi. Unfortunately, decades have passed in a flash, and I can't find such a talented master anymore. The rest can't even withstand a single blow. I won't let you down." Fang Yan looked straight into Coming's eyes and said in a very serious tone. Coming looked at Fang Yan's eyes and temples and said, "It seems that you still haven't crossed that threshold. Wait until you have crossed that threshold, then come and say this to me." It's immoral to give people high expectations for nothing. After saying this, Coming didn't have any intention to talk to Fang Yan anymore. He passed through Fang Yan's body and walked toward Gong Sun Chi's courtyard. After a few steps, Coming turned back and looked at Fang Yan. "If Mo Qingdi returns, please come and inform me." Fang Yan's eyes turned cold and he said, "Don't worry about this, as long as the old drunkard returns, I will inform you first." Coming smiled and said, "I hope you can understand. It's hard to find an opponent." Fang Yan wanted to go back and discuss with Gong Sun Chi again. If Gong Sun Chi stabbed his master to death, then the debt of saving his life in the forest of death would be even. Would Fang Yan agree? Chapter 789. Fang Yan felt that his mood was like a boat sailing in the sea, going up and down. He was in a bad mood after being ambushed by the Jiang family in Huaqing. After coming to Beijing, Qin Etian warmly welcomed him and accompanied him to a hot spring bath. Although he didn't see anything, his mood was still better. He was upset again after failing to negotiate with the Qin family. Outside the Red Wall, he met Jiang Yunong of the Jiang family and vented his frustrations on him, improving his mood again. Seeing Gong Sun Chi feel his true feelings, Fang Yan was in a good mood. When he walked out the door and met Gong Sun Chi's master, Undying Divine Dragon, Fang Yan's mood turned gloomy again. Against an opponent like the Jiang family, Fang Yan was still struggling to resist. However, when he met a Heavenly Dao realm expert like Ting Ming, he couldn't even utter a threatening word. This was because everyone knew that he posed no threat to him. He also knew all of this, so there was no need for him to say it out in front of others. When Fang Yan entered the Red Wall, he got mooing to bring the car back. Now that he was out of the Red Wall and there was no car waiting for him, he planned on walking around the corner. It was still early, and it was unlikely that Qin Etian had returned from her mother's place. He needed to stay behind and think of a way to get some information. It would be best if he could hear news that Gong Sun Chi had suddenly wiped out the Jiang family. Thinking of how Gong Sun Chi's leg injury had yet to recover, the possibility of that happening was slim. All he could do was shake his head and sigh. Fang Yan walked out of the Red Wall, crossed the moat, passed through the Black Tortoise Gate, and walked towards Chang'an Street. Fang Yan looked at his surroundings. Everything was familiar, as though he had seen every shop before. He stopped in his tracks and thought about it seriously. Only then did he realize that the teacher had brought him to meet that old man. After coming out, he had taken him to the Bai family's noodle shop to eat a bowl of Zhajiang noodles. Fang Yan squinted his eyes and smiled. He never expected that his thoughts would lead him back to the path he had taken before. It was already noon, and he planned to find a nearby restaurant to eat something. The Bai family's Zhejiang noodle restaurant was something he absolutely could not go to. If he was poisoned by the Bai family's old man who hated him to the bone, wouldn't he die of injustice? Fang Yen looked around, but before he could find a suitable restaurant, he found a familiar figure. Fang Yen opened his mouth to shout, but he quickly stopped himself. Why was he calling her? He had nothing to do with her. Just as Fang Yen was about to turn around and leave, he found that the girl was in trouble. Is he going to save the damsel in distress? Fang Yen smiled bitterly. But I really don't have the mood right now. Bai Jie is a student of Beijing Foreign Language School, majoring in Japanese and Spanish. Because her family ran a shop, she would go home every day after school to help her grandfather entertain guests. Today was no different from usual. She hummed a tune and played with the heart-shaped stone in her hand as she walked to the noodle shop at home. Suddenly, she was blocked by a group of people. 3 girls and 2 boys. All of them were Bai Jie's classmates. They were considered as students of the same school. Bai Jie looked at them in surprise and asked, "What do you want?" "Bai Jie, you shameless bitch, how dare you steal my boyfriend?" The leader of the group was a girl with short hair. She was wearing a black leather outfit and carrying a black, fashionable backpack. She looked cold and cool. When she pointed at Bai Jie, a scorpion tattoo was revealed on the back of her hand. "Zhou Lin, what are you talking about? When did I steal your boyfriend?" Bai Jie frowned and said. Her personality was gentle and sunny, but it didn't mean that she was weak. Her classmates called her a shameless bitch, which made it hard for her to accept. She was very angry. "You still have the face to deny it? Where did you go with Li Yifeng last night?" "Li Yifeng?" Bai Jie thought for a moment and said, "The school was holding a New Year's Eve party. Li Yifeng and I were the hosts, and he asked me to go to the library to exchange words." "Exchange words?" Zhou Lin sneered. Everyone listen carefully. These educated bitches are really different. If it's a green tea bitch, then let it be. Why are you still talking about such high-sounding exchange words? Did everyone learn another trick? Wang Xiaola, if you sleep with someone's girlfriend in the future, just say that you took her to exchange words. Do you think her boyfriend will believe you? The boy named Wang Xiaola giggled and said, "How can I do that? I can't do such a shameless thing." Look, even a shameless person like Wang Xiaola said he wouldn't do such a shameless thing. Bai Jie, how could you do it? Zhou Lin's attitude towards Bai Jie became even more vile, and her words became even more unpleasant. You always pretend to be a pure white lotus, but deep down, you're actually a lewd woman. Do you want to try it if you're a man? Zhou Lin, I want you to apologize to me immediately. Bai Jie was so angry that her body was trembling. Her delicate face was tense. She pointed at Zhou Lin and said, "Nothing happened between me and Li Yifeng. Apologize to me immediately." Bai Jie, you still don't know, right? Zhou Lin sneered. You don't want to say it, but those men who have tasted the sweetness won't keep such a secret. Do you know how I know about this? When I went to find Li Yifeng, he was bragging to his buddies that he had already taken you last night. He said that you were still a virgin before him. Bai Jie, do you still want to pretend? I didn't. He lied. Bai Jie's eyes were red because of her anger. She tried hard not to cry. Nothing happened between me and him. We just exchanged words together. He confessed to me, but I rejected him. I don't like him at all. You don't like him? Who are you lying to? Li Feng is our school's most handsome boy and the basketball captain. How can you not like him? Which girl in the school doesn't like him? He even confessed to you? Yes, it is. So cold. Li Feng confessed to you, but you rejected him. Bai Jie, are you trying to tell us that you are more outstanding than all the girls who like Li Yifeng? I didn't mean it that way. I just don't like him. You didn't like him? You only spent one night with him? You exchanged words with him when you didn't like him? Bai Jie, don't you think you've gone overboard? Do you think that I won't be able to deal with you if you don't admit it? Do you believe that I won't tear your clothes and let you run naked on the streets? You lunatic. I'm not a lunatic. You're a whore. Bai Jie quickly admitted. I didn't do it. I have nothing to do with him. A dead duck still refuses to admit it. I hate green tea bitches like you the most. Come, everyone, tear her clothes for me. A group of people rushed over and surrounded Bai Jie's frail body. Zhou Lin reached out to pull the buttons on Bai Jie's dress, preparing to tear her clothes off. Let go. Let go of me. Bai Jie hugged her chest tightly to prevent her dress from being torn off. Tear her clothes off. I'm going to take a photo. I'm going to send her nude photos to every male student in the school. I want to see how she can maintain her image as a little white flower in the future. Let go of me. Bai Jie cried. The situation was too dangerous, and the consequences were too serious. Some conflicts between students were sometimes even more filthy and disgusting than the methods used by adults. They were easily angered and violent, and they didn't care about the consequences. Wang Xiaola, use your F***king strength. Is she your girlfriend or your biological mother? You're standing there like a dead person. Make sure you don't block my angle. I'm going to take a photo. Hurry. The phone that Zhou Lin was using to take a photo was slapped away. The white iPhone fell to the ground and shattered into pieces. On the screen, Bai Jie's tearful face was sliced into countless pieces. Zhou Lin was furious. She turned around and glared fiercely at the man who hit her phone and scolded, "Your mother is dead, and you're here to interfere?" Zhou Lin received a slap on her face. King dare. Zhou Lin received another slap on her face. After a few consecutive slaps, Zhou Lin was completely dumbfounded. She stared at the smiling man with her eyes wide open, as if she was looking at a devil smiling at her. What kind of person was this man? Who are you? Wang Xiaola asked. Wang Xiaola received a slap on his face. Because he used too much strength, his body fell backward and his butt landed on the hard concrete floor. Who are you? How can you hit someone? The girl who pulled Bai Jie's hair received a slap on her face. Blood flowed from the corner of her mouth, and her eyes were filled with horror as she looked at the man who was slapping her without saying a word. The students were finally afraid. They let go of Bai Jie's arm, let go of her clothes, and carefully approached Zhou Lin. Their faces were filled with anger, and their hearts were filled with humiliation. However, they didn't dare to fight back because they knew they were no match for this man. Who are you to her? Zhou Lin covered her face. It was hard for her to accept being slapped several times in front of Bai Jie. Her lungs were about to explode from anger. Leave your name, this isn't over. Zhou Lin received another slap on her face. The man looked at the students who were desperately retreating and asked, anything else? Chapter 790. We often see this kind of school violence. A group of boys beat up another boy, causing him to be hospitalized. A group of girls beat up another girl, tearing her clothes, taking nude photos and posting them on the internet. Senior students blackmailing junior students. Don't leave after school has become a widely circulated and funny saying. Sometimes, you can't help but wonder, why are the children in school so violent and murderous? Of course, it's not like there isn't a better solution. Some time ago, the media reported a kidnapping case that shocked China and America. A group of Huaxia students kidnapped their compatriot and forced the girl to kneel in the cafeteria for 20 minutes. Their brutal crimes included stripping her clothes, burning her breasts with cigarette butts, lighting her hair with a lighter, forcing her to lie on the ground to eat sand, shaving her hair, and forcing her to eat it. The brutality of the crime was outrageous. If this kind of thing happened in China, of course, it wasn't uncommon in China. Those offenders would always easily forgive them because they were still a group of children or because of the law protecting minors. They would either go back to reflect for a few days or write a so-called self-reflection essay or record a demerit. It looked like there was no punishment at all. However, when those offenders thought that it was just house play between children, American law would send them to prison and punish them with sky-high bonds. Children have the right to make mistakes, but children don't have the right to break the law. If they didn't pay a heavy price, such things would continue to happen in a holy and noble place like school. Fang Yan used to be a teacher. He hoped that his students could be simpler, more tolerant, more relaxed, and more enjoyable. Whether it was Zhao Guodong and the others he taught before or Zhou Lin and the others he met today, their behavior had crossed the line. This wasn't a joke between students, but a destructive attack on a person's life. With Bai Jie's personality, if Zhou Lin sent the nude photos to every boy in school as a prank, what would happen to Bai Jie's life in the future? If she did something extreme, who would be responsible for the tragedy? At that time, someone would stand up and say that she was just a child, that she didn't expect this outcome, and that she didn't do it on purpose. Then, they would quickly pack their bags, transfer schools, and run away. However, what about the family that was destroyed? Even if they wanted to destroy Bai Xiu's family, this was not something Fang Yan wanted to see. Bai Xiu was Bai Xiu, Bai Jie was Bai Jie. Bai Xiu was a murderous demon, but Bai Jie was just a student, a pure and kind student at that. Therefore, when Fang Yan saw this kind of thing, he was particularly angry, and he was particularly impolite. Anything else? Fang Yan asked. There was a faint smile on his face, or perhaps it was not a smile, but a taunt. Zhou Lin still wanted to say a few more pleasantries, but when she met Fang Yan's icy gaze, she couldn't spit out the profanities that were already at the tip of her tongue. She glared at Bai Jie fiercely before turning around and walking towards the entrance of the alley. Zhou Lin! Fang Yan shouted. Zhou Lin turned around and looked at Fang Yan with fear. This devil, what else did he want to do? I know you're not convinced, Fang Yan said with a smile. It's okay, I like people with pride. It doesn't matter if it's a man or a woman. Zhou Lin and her friends were confused. What was he trying to say? However, if you dare to cause trouble for Bai Jie in school again. Fang Yan's toes gently drew a circle on the ground, and the hard cement floor was cut into a circular pancake by him. Everything you said just now, I will do it to you. Zhou Lin, Wang Xiaola, and the others looked at Fang Yan's feet and the cement block that was cut by his toes. Their eyes widened, and their faces were full of surprise. Was this guy Spider-Man's transformation? Anything else? Fang Yan asked. Zhou Lin, Wang Xiaola, and the others' anger dissipated, and they fled the scene like a group of frightened rabbits. Fang Yan turned to look at Bai Jie, who was hugging her chest with tears streaming down her face. Her hair was messy, and her dress was torn in a few places. The zipper on her back had been partially unzipped, revealing her smooth and clean back. Fang Yan sighed softly and said, I'll send you back. Bai Jie shook her head desperately, her voice choked with sobs, and she couldn't say a word. Fang Yan thought for a moment and said, Then I'll send you. He looked around and said, I'll send you to the hotel. There was an express hotel a few dozen meters away, and Fang Yan used his ID card to get a single room. Under the strange gaze of the receptionist, he led Bai Jie upstairs. After entering the room, Bai Jie's crying stopped. She took out a tissue to wipe the tears on her face, and her face turned bright red. It was like a ripe tomato. Fang Yan looked at Bai Jie and said, Go wash up. Bai Jie nodded, turned around, and walked into the bathroom. When she came out again, the tears on her face had been washed away, and her hair had been combed soft again. Surprisingly, she still crossed her arms in front of her chest and walked cautiously. She lowered her head and walked to Fang Yan and said, Thank you. You're welcome. Fang Yan said, This kind of thing, no one can tolerate it. Can you do me a favor? The girl asked aloud. My dress is broken. They ripped the zipper off. Bai Jie said awkwardly, her face was so shy that it could drip water. Can you help me pin my dress? Can I? Fang Yan also became a little careful. Why does the atmosphere feel a little different? I have a pin in my school bag. After getting an affirmative answer from Fang Yan, Bai Jie quickly found a pin in her school bag. She handed the pin to Fang Yan, and then turned around to show her back to Fang Yan. This made it easier for Fang Yan to fasten the zipper in the back to prevent the dress from opening up on both sides. Her white and smooth skin had the youthful luster of a young girl. Her figure was slender, and from the open part, her soft waist and perfect body curves could be seen. She was wearing pure black underwear, and the bandage of the underwear cut into her flesh, leaving a shallow groove. Bai Jie's body was tense, and her breathing was rapid. She felt Fang Yan's eyes scrutinizing her, and every part of her body was extremely sensitive. However, she couldn't say anything. This was what she begged him to do, and she took the initiative to show her nearly naked back to him. A girl of her age has never been in close contact with a man like this. It was a kind of sensitive and stimulating throbbing. She could feel her heart pounding so hard that it felt like it was about to jump out of her chest. Is it done? Bai Jie's mouth was dry, and her body was trembling. She felt that she had to say something. Anything would be good. It hasn't started yet. Fang Yan said with a smile. Bai Jie nodded. She didn't know why she had such a reaction. She didn't know what was the point of this. Maybe she just wanted to prove to him that she was still sober and not nervous at all. Fang Yan took the pin and fastened the two pieces of the dress that were uncontrollably lifted to both sides, and said, "There is still one missing." "Then I will find another one." Bai Jie hurriedly jumped away and rummaged through her bag. Fang Yan smiled and said, "I lied to you. It's already been fastened. Your dress won't fall down again." Bai Jie was stunned for a while, then she zipped up the bag, turned around and said coquettishly, "You bad guy." Bai Jie's mood was much better now that she didn't have to worry about the dress falling down at any time. She looked at Fang Yan and said, "Are you going to stay here today?" "It doesn't seem necessary." Fang Yan shook his head with a smile. "Anyway, the room is already open," Bai Jie said. "I will make you a cup of tea." Bai Jie had been a helper in the noodle house for a long time, so she was quick to work. She quickly brought a cup of tea and placed it in front of the table where Fang Yan was sitting. She also held a cup of plain water and sat in front of Fang Yan. She looked down at him and said, "Am I very embarrassed?" Fang Yan shook his head. "They are the ones who are embarrassed. How can that be? No one dares to bully them." Bai Jie naturally didn't believe Fang Yan's comforting words. Perhaps they haven't realized it yet, but in the future, they will feel ashamed of what they have done today. Furthermore, if they don't change their ways, they will eventually pay the price for their actions. Fang Yan said with a serious expression on his face. This time, he wasn't comforting her. He really thought so in his heart. "You didn't do anything wrong, but you were attacked like this? How can it be embarrassing? I just think I shouldn't cry." Bai Jie said. "Actually, I didn't want to cry. But when I saw you appear, I couldn't help but cry. I suddenly thought of my brother. If my brother was here, they wouldn't dare to bully me like this. My brother wouldn't allow others to bully me like this. I haven't seen my brother for a long time. I don't know how he is now." "Of course." Fang Yan nodded firmly and said, "If your brother was here, they wouldn't dare to bully you like this. He wouldn't allow them to bully you like this." At the entrance of the Express Hotel, a man wearing a black felt hat and a scarf around his neck stared at the lobby of the hotel as if he was hesitating whether to rush up and catch the adulterer. Chapter 791. I didn't seduce her boyfriend. Bai Jie held a cup of water and sat in front of Fang Yan. Her head was lowered, and her face was full of melancholy. It seemed that she hadn't fully recovered from the blow just now. She was a very simple girl. Compared to many girls who said, "if *CKU, and grab your breasts," she even hesitated to say the word, seduce. She didn't know why, but she wanted to explain to Fang Yan. Perhaps she wanted to explain that she wasn't the kind of woman they said she was? Fang Yan smiled and drank his tea, waiting for Bai Jie to continue. "Actually, I don't like Li Yifeng at all. I think he's too frivolous. Relying on his good looks, other than Zhou Lin, he has several girlfriends." Seeing Fang Yan looking at her with a smile, Bai Jie hurriedly explained, "Actually, I don't think he's handsome either. He's not as handsome as my brother." Fang Yan nodded. Putting aside his selfishness, Fang Yan had to admit that Bai Xiu was indeed a rare handsome guy. In Swallow Dock, other than himself, Li Xiaotian and Zhu Ziden couldn't suppress his limelight. The school is holding a New Year's Eve party. Li Feng and I are the two hosts. Originally, we have to rehearse our lines before the event. Li Feng said to get a room at the school gate or a private room at a cafe. I didn't think it was good, so I said to go to the library. He confessed to me, but I refused. I didn't expect him to say such things behind my back. You really don't understand, guys. Fang Yen said with a smile. I mean, you don't understand the psychology of scumbags. You just look at him, and he has already stripped your clothes off countless times in his heart. Ah! Bai Jie's mouth opened wide. She thought to herself, how many guys have I looked at? I'm not talking about all the guys. Fang Yen said gloomily. I mean, guys like Li Yifeng shouldn't be given any chance. What are you going to do next? I don't want Grandpa to worry. I can't tell him about this. Fang Yen nodded. As long as you don't say anything, they won't know. When I go back, I will resign from my position as a host. I won't have any contact with Li Yifeng anymore. That's fine too. Fang Yen nodded. Those things didn't have much meaning in the first place. Bai Jie looked up at Fang Yen and said, I really have to thank you this time. If it weren't for you, I might have. It's just a bite from a dog. What's the big deal? Bai Jie blushed as she nodded and asked, when did you arrive in Beijing? Last night, Fang Yen said with a smile. What a coincidence. You came back yesterday and we met today. Bai Jie looked very happy and said, have you eaten? How about I treat you to some noodles? Fang Yen shook his head and said, no need. Let me treat you. I will personally cook noodles for you. My noodles are very delicious. Bai Jie extended an invitation with a sincere look. Otherwise, I don't know how to repay you. Fang Yen smiled and said, you don't have to repay me. You just need to live a good life. That's the best repayment for me. Bai Jie looked at Fang Yen thoughtfully and asked, you must be very good friends with my brother, right? It must be so. Bai Jie looked very sure and said proudly, it's not convenient for my brother to meet us, so I have to trouble you to take care of us from behind, right? Seeing that Fang Yen was silent, Bai Jie was even happier and said, I guessed it right? It must be so. When Grandpa Long took you there last time, I had already guessed it. This time I encountered trouble and you helped me solve it. Fang Yen, you have been protecting me from behind, right? Actually, it's not like that. Don't lie. I know it must be so. The last time those hooligans went to the noodle house to make trouble, you happened to appear. This time, the bad students in the school came to find trouble with me, you happened to appear. If that's not the case, how could you happen to appear in front of me every time? This is really a coincidence. I don't believe it. Bai Jie shook her head. Big brother Fang Yen, can you tell me? What happened to my brother? Your brother? Fang Yen regretted jumping out to be a hero to save the beauty. The following plot was completely beyond his expectations. How could he answer such a question? Seeing Fang Yan's hesitant expression, Bai Jie's tears rolled down and she said, my brother, is he no longer here? He should still be, right? Big brother Fang Yen, don't lie to me. Tell me the truth, I can bear it. I know you want to hide it from my grandfather, afraid that the old man can't bear the blow. Don't worry, I won't let him know. Fang Yen put down the teacup, got up, and said, actually, I'm not very familiar with your brother. With that, he opened the door of the room and walked out. Bai Jie looked at Fang Yan's back and cried even more sadly. Her brother must have met with an accident. Bai Jie felt that her life was so bitter. The most bitter thing was, why did she have to be called Bai Jie? Fang Yen found a Xiangxi crock soup shop on the roadside and went in to drink a bowl of bitter gourd soup to calm himself down. He felt that his inner fire had risen so much that his body was about to burn. After eating the soup, when Fang Yen was about to go out to take a taxi back, he found that there was already a luxury car waiting at the door. Mu Ying, who was wearing an expensive suit, once again became the focus of the crowd. Everyone's eyes were focused on Mu Ying and the luxury Rolls-Royce behind him. When they saw Fang Yen walk towards the luxury car step by step and saw Mu Ying bow slightly to him and open the door for him, the customers who were sitting next to him at the table and eating pork trotter rice and bitter gourd soup all widened their eyes. He's too pretentious, they thought in their hearts. The shop owner chased after them and took out his phone with his greasy hand to take photos of Fang Yan's back and the luxury car. He wanted to print out the photos and hang them in the shop to tell the other customers that even young masters who drove Rolls-Royce liked to eat his pork trotter rice. Oh right, he also wanted to prepare a 99 yuan Rolls-Royce meal. When Fang Yen returned to Qin Etienne's villa, the housekeeper Coco told Fang Yen that Miss Bai had returned and was enjoying the hot spring in the backyard. He asked Fang Yen to go there directly. Fang Yen thought for a moment and walked toward the backyard. Qin Etienne's body was soaking in the hot spring with 2 cucumber slices on his eyelids. No wonder Fang Yen always thought that Qin Etienne's skin was so good. It would be strange if his skin wasn't good after soaking in the hot spring for so long every day. Qin Etienne seemed to be resting with his eyes closed. Hearing Fang Yan's footsteps, he said, "Come in and soak for a while. You must be tired today." Fang Yan sat beside the chair and didn't want to go into the hot spring. "Whenever I feel stressed or in a bad mood, I like to come in and soak for a while. When I get out of the hot spring, I'll find myself full of energy again. I'll be a new me. At that time, maybe I'll find some new ideas. At that time, it proves that you're not anxious. Because when you're really anxious, you can't even soak in the hot spring," Fang Yan said with a smile. "That's true." Qin Qian didn't deny Fang Yan's statement. "I've never experienced something like gambling my life. I have 100 yuan, but I'll only take out 30 or 50 yuan to gamble every time. I won't bet 80 or 100 yuan. So, no matter when, I have a chance to win back. I want to do that too, but someone forced me to bet everything." Fang Yan said aloud. "Do you know the result of today's negotiation? If I said that I was standing behind the curtain when you negotiated with her, would you blame me?" Qin Etienne took off the cucumber slices on his eyelids and opened his beautiful eyes to look at Fang Yan. Fang Yan said, "What does this have to do with you? She made such a proposal without discussing it with you. I didn't expect her to express herself so directly." Qin Etienne looked at Fang Yan, her long eyelashes fluttering, and she looked a little embarrassed. "Yes, a little bit. I thought she would be more reserved. But, are you really not going to think about it?" Qin Etienne squinted his eyes and smiled. "If you agree to her request, the threat to the family will be solved. Unless the Jiang family wants a war of the century, or they won't use my man as an example. Besides, the Qin family's property is very rich. With our ability, we can completely hold everything in our hands. Those brothers and sisters at home, if they talk to us nicely, we can give them some benefits. If they play some tricks and stab us in the back, they won't even get a hair. Then..." Qin Etienne splashed water on his face with his arm and said, "I don't look ugly, do I?" Fang Yan's throat moved and he said, "You've heard my answer. I heard it. I heard every word you said, every sigh. But I can't help but want to hear it again. I'll ask you face to face, and then I'll see you refuse me face to face." Qin Etienne said with a smile. "Switch. I can give up even more." Chapter 792. This kind of question was too heavy, and it always made Fang Yan speechless. Someone said, "Please give me a girl when I'm 18 years old." Fang Yan's problem was that God gave him too many girls at once. God, in arranging his fate, must have shaken his hand so badly when he tipped out the bottle of the girl that the whole bottle of the girl fell on his head. Otherwise, how could he have encountered such a love calamity? Fang Yan didn't want to talk about beauty's kindness. He really couldn't accept Qin Etienne's feelings after having Yi Rou. Or he could give up Yi Rou and accept Qin Etienne's feelings alone. Looking at the fairy-like beautiful woman soaking in the water, Fang Yan said in a low voice, "You know, this is really difficult for me." "I know." Qin Etienne said with a smile. "I know it's difficult for you. So, I'm just saying it. That's all I can say. When she proposed this kind of deal, I already knew your answer. How could you accept it? If you accept, then you're not the Fang Yan I like. But if you reject her, what will you do in the future? Face the Jiang family alone? The Jiang family is a giant. If they attack, even the Qin family will find it hard to resist. If, and I'm saying if, because of your rejection, she is inclined to cooperate with the Jiang family and keeps silent on this matter, or directly accepts all kinds of benefits from the Jiang family, then at that time, you'll face a situation where you'll be surrounded by enemies. Have you thought about all of this? I have. Fang Yan nodded. This is the worst-case scenario. What we've built up with difficulty may be quickly destroyed by them. What we've worked hard for may also be completely taken away by others. I may lose everything, and I don't even know if I'll be able to keep my life at that time. You came to Beijing to negotiate with the Qin family because you didn't make enough preparations. Fang Yan nodded. Against an opponent like the Jiang family, no one dares to say that they have made sufficient preparations. I am the victim, and the Jiang family is the attacker. I didn't have the ability to call a truce, so I could only grit my teeth and continue to fight. Perhaps we will die this way, but in the eyes of the outside world, in your eyes, will that be more dignified? Qin Etienne pondered for a long time and then said in a deep voice, I have an idea. What is it? Voila! Qin Etienne suddenly stood up from the hot spring pool. Her black hair flowed like swimming ink, and her skin was as white as the first snow. Her breasts rose and fell like mountains, and her face was as beautiful as a goddess coming out of the bath. She was completely naked, revealing the most precious part of a young girl in front of Fang Yan. She was not timid, nor would she dodge. She just stood there with her back straight, as though it was a matter of course, yet unscrupulous. Her figure did not make people feel erotic. Instead, it gave people a pure and holy feeling. Her eyes were like the sun in the sky, and the blazing light made it difficult for people to look directly at her. Qin Etienne looked at Fang Yan expressionlessly and said, You've seen my body, so I'm sure she won't make things too difficult for you. After all, she can't be sure if I will become your woman in the end. In the evening, Fang Yan received a call from Li Xiaotian. What's up? Sneaking to Yanjing without telling your brothers? Li Xiaotian's voice was both friendly and reproachful. Fang Yan came in a hurry this time, and he had a heavy responsibility on his shoulders. He really didn't plan to contact them. I just came last night, and there are still a lot of things to take care of. Fang Yan said with a smile. I wanted to wait until I'm done here before I can have a good gathering with you guys. Alright, don't hurt our hearts anymore. I know you won't take the initiative to contact us even if you're done with your business. Where are you now? Fang Yan thought for a while and told them the address of the villa where Qin Etienne lived. Oh, that's the most famous villa area in Yanjing, and it's also the earliest villa area. It's the best landscape and hot springs in Yanjing. Later developers wanted to build there, but the government didn't approve it at all. Why did you live there? After a pause, Li Xiaoan suddenly understood and said, I see. I heard that the young lady of the Qin family took a fancy to the houses here many years ago and bought several villas there. Are you living in Miss Qin's house now? Fang Yan glanced at Qin Etienne, who was leisurely drinking coffee and reading a magazine on the opposite side, and asked, What's the matter? It seems that you acquiesced. Nothing, I just want to know if you're free tonight. No, Fang Yan said. I've booked a private room in the Garden Hotel. Come here at 7 o'clock in the evening. Li Xiaotian said. I'll send you the address and the number of the private room later. See you there. I may not be free tonight. Bip bip. The other side of the phone had hung up. Qin Etienne took a sip of coffee and said, Your friends are very good. I understand their feelings, but I don't want them to stand out with me on this matter. Afraid of bringing danger to them? If something good happens, will you think of them? Of course. That's it then, Qin Etienne said, her voice cool. If they just accept your kindness but never know how to give, would you still be willing to be friends with such people? Go ahead. Qin Etienne said. You need the strength of everyone. You don't need to waste any of it. When Fang Yan got out of Qin Etienne's extended luxury Rolls-Royce, when everyone's eyes were focused on him, Fang Yan had to admit that he somewhat liked this feeling. No wonder Qin Etienne always used this car as a means of transportation. Just this car and the bodyguards around the car were enough to scare away the enemies. Qin Etienne didn't like trouble, so she could always choose the best way to solve it. Of course, that was except for suddenly standing up from the hot spring pool. Until now, Fang Yan's little heart was still beating fast. When Fang Yan came to the Imperial Garden room under the guidance of the waiter, Li Xiaotian rushed over and hugged Fang Yen tightly. Little Yanzi, you're finally here. We missed you so much. Before Fang Yen could push him away, Yi Fengxing, the big fatso, rushed over. He opened his arms and hugged both Fang Yen and Li Xiaonan, almost suffocating them. Let go! Let go! It was Li Xiaotian who couldn't hold it anymore. He shouted anxiously, Yi Fengxing, are you trying to kill us for money? Yi Fengxing laughed and let go of Fang Yen and Li Xiaotian. He looked at Fang Yen with a smile and said, Sorry, I couldn't help it. I don't know how your wife can stand your physique. Li Yanqing teased. Others get thinner and thinner as they practice martial arts. You, on the other hand, have trained yourself into a body full of fat. Li Yanqing patted Fang Yan's shoulder and asked with a smile, Are you okay? I'm fine. Fang Yan said with a smile. The devil's incarnation, Wang Kaixian, walked over and cursed, The Jiang family is going too far. If they infuriate me, I'll burn down that shabby mansion of theirs. Don't think I haven't scouted the place. You're just shooting your mouth off. If you really dare to do that, I'll write my name backwards. Your name backwards is called Jingrua? Fang Yan allowed them to fight by the side, his gaze fixed on the man who was looking at him with a smile. Compared to when he left, the man's eyes were deeper, and the contours of his face were deeper. Because of the long period of exposure to the sea breeze, his skin had become bronze. He had a stocky build and looked like a bodybuilder. His smile was warm and looked clean and pure. However, there was a murderous aura around him. It was as if it could break through the skin and give the enemy a storm-like attack. When did you come back? Fang Yan asked the man. He didn't think that he would come back. He didn't think that they would meet here. Meeting old friends was, after all, a joyous occasion. Yesterday, Zhu Ziden said with a smile. Because of me? Fang Yan asked. Because of us. Zhu Ziden said. 3 years ago, because of the incident at the Maple Leaf Club, Yi Daoling began to value the abilities of these young people. He disrupted all these people and sent them to places where they could display their strengths. Zhu Ziden's martial arts path had never broken through, so he was sent to the dangerous North Sea to guard. There was no news of him for several years. The sea was vast, and it was impossible to find a person. However, he didn't know who called him, or perhaps it was telepathy between brothers. He rushed back at the most dangerous and difficult time for Fang Yan. Together with the other partners of Swallow Dock, he firmly stood behind Fang Yan. They were the Swallow Dock's male god team, an invincible team of brothers. Fang Yan looked at Zhu Ziden's eyes and said with a smile, Looks like you've made great progress. Zhu Ziden nodded and said, I've been killing in the North Sea for 3 years. The invaders or various sea beasts are returning. It's time to use my sword. Fang Yan reached out and hugged Zhu Ziden in his arms. Welcome home. Chapter 793. Teacherson, Dan Qiusheng, please pour in the wine, don't stop. I will sing a song with you, please listen to it for me. Bells, drums, dishes, and jade are not expensive, but I hope to be drunk forever and never wake up. Since ancient times, sages have been lonely, only those who drink leave their names. Although Wang Kaixian was a devil incarnate, his voice was very deep and powerful, and the song that came out from his smoky voice was very infectious. At first, he was singing alone, but then Ruan Jing and Yi Fengxing sang along. In the end, everyone sang along. After the song ended, Yi Fengxing shouted to drink, and everyone picked up their bowls of white wine and drank it in one gulp. Everyone present was from Swallow Dock, and the men of Swallow Dock loved wine, and their alcohol tolerance was excellent. When the waiters in the private room saw these guys open the moutai and pour the wine bowl after bowl, they felt a little dizzy. How was this drinking? They were clearly risking their lives. However, they didn't have the chance to be dizzy for too long, because very soon, everyone felt that they were in the way and directly chased them out. They poured the wine and drank it themselves. Why would they need the waiters? The gathering of friends was pure and lively. Everyone spoke freely, unscrupulously showing off and attacking each other. Zhu Ziden had guarded the North Sea for many years, and the stories that came out of her mouth were both new and strange, so she naturally became the main character of this gathering. Do you know about the sword-kissed viper? That fellow is originally born in the deep sea, and normally, it's impossible to see them. However, their venom is extremely strong, and they're not human, but they're very cunning. One night, a sword-kissed viper somehow sneaked into the crew's cabin and bit 7 of our brothers. At that time, I was sitting on the mast drinking wine, and when I heard the commotion below, I carried the wine pot and jumped down. After figuring out what was going on, I raised my long sword and chased after the viper. That animal was very cunning, and when it saw someone chasing it, it jumped into the sea, and I also jumped into the sea. Everyone held their breath, waiting for the story to continue. That animal acted as if it were its own home in the sea. That's right, it's a poisonous snake. Moreover, it had the ability to change its color. How could I find it in the pitch-black sea? I had already given up, but I didn't expect that the animal still wanted to fish in troubled waters. It wanted to take advantage of the black waves to bite me. I was so angry that I chopped off its head with my sword. Killed? Yi Fengsheng asked. This child loved to listen to stories when he was young. Every time he listened to a story, he would be especially fascinated. It was easy to put himself in the shoes of others. Kill him. Zhu Ziden nodded. What about those who were bitten by poisonous snakes? 3 died, the rest were saved by Shiqing. Since Shiqing is here, why didn't she save the other 3? Yi Fengsheng asked. Zhu Ziden glanced at Yi Fengsheng, lowered her head and drank a big bowl of wine. She said in a sorrowful voice, "Not enough snake purity." The doctor said that the snake Qing of the sword-kissed poisonous snake was not enough and could only save 4 people. Therefore, the 3 of them committed suicide. Our brothers guarding the North Sea all had one of those snakes in their mouths. They were worried that they would be captured alive during a mission and leak some secret. If we didn't stop them in time, the other 4 would have committed suicide as well. The private room was dead silent. Everyone's expression was so gloomy that it was somewhat scary. Living is not easy, but sometimes death is even harder. Our ancient people often told the story of 2 peaches killing 3 soldiers. Because it was difficult to distribute the benefits, everyone fought to the death. However, in the sea area that we are unfamiliar with, there is still a group of people who chose to die when faced with the possibility of living. It's not that they didn't cherish their lives, but because they knew how precious life was, they were willing to give this precious chance to live to their brothers and comrades. They didn't die from the sword-kissed poisonous snake's attack. They died from suicide. Zhu Ziden said in a hoarse voice. Her face was filled with deep sorrow. Come, let's toast them. Fang Yan raised his bowl. Although we don't know his name. However, they will always live on in the hearts of those who have witnessed this event and heard this story. Everyone raised their wine bowls and toasted in the direction of the North Sea. After that, I stopped drinking at night. Every night, we patrol the entire ship because we are worried that monsters like the sword-kissed viper will climb on board again, Zhu Ziden said in a heavy voice. It was only later that I found out that the sword-kissed viper was raised by a snake breeder. They wanted to let it enter the control room of the main ship and wait for me to arrive at the shore. Then, they would slaughter the sect that liked to raise sea snakes in the country that had always been hostile to us. Beautifully done. Wang Kaixin roared, his face red. A man should do what he shouldn't do. Ziden, when are you going to the North Sea again? I'll go with you. Zhu Ziden shook her head and said, I have to deal with the Grim Reaper every day in the North Sea. Because I know the horror of death, I yearn for this peaceful world. However, if the country needs me, I will go to the North Sea again. Victorious return, what are you saying? Ziden just came back, and she wants to go to the North Sea with you again? That's right, the matter with Fang Yan still hasn't been resolved. In any case, I'm going to Huaqing with Fang Yan this time. Zhu Ziden looked at Fang Yan and asked, when are you going back to Huaqing? Tomorrow. Fang Yan replied. He couldn't accept that woman's conditions, so he couldn't continue negotiating with the Qin clan. As such, there wasn't much point in staying in Yanjing. He wanted to go back and stand with Lu Chaoga and the others. Without him, he wouldn't be able to grasp the situation in Huaqing. I'll go with you, Zhu Ziden said. I'll go as well. Yi Fengsheng roared with a red face and neck. I'll fight whoever doesn't let me. I want to go as well. Even if someone breaks my legs, I'll crawl. All right, you guys come with me. Fang Yan smiled. Aren't you afraid that we'll take the risk this time? Li Xiaotian chuckled. When I came here, someone told me that being willing to sacrifice for others is a brother, and being willing to accept the kindness of others is also a brother, Fang Yan said. Through thick and thin. To be able to say such philosophical words, it must be a woman, and a beautiful one at that. Li Xiaotian said with a profound expression. Ruan Jing sneered and said, I can even calculate that beautiful woman's surname is Qin. The smoke of the incense wafted out, and the fragrance of tea permeated the air. Qin Etienne, dressed in a plain white robe, was kneeling in front of a tea table carved from the roots of a 1,000-year-old rosewood tree. His posture was elegant and his movements were calm, and he was ordering tea as he conversed with the woman on the screen. This doesn't suit your style, Qin Etienne said without raising his head. She poured herself a cup of tea, then closed her eyes and sipped on it. You'll never dwell on what has happened. You'll only pay attention to the current facts, and then look for problems and come up with the best solution. A man who isn't willing to marry my daughter has seen my woman's naked body. No parent would be able to accept this kind of reality, whether it's something that happened in the past or something that I have to face now. The woman on the screen was breathtakingly beautiful. She didn't wear any makeup, nor did she wear any jewelry. However, just by sitting there, her every frown, every smile, every word, and every sigh made people feel great pressure. I'm your mother first, and then I'm your manager. But what I don't understand is, how could you do such a thing? Do you think this will help him? Threaten to change my stance? No, I know it won't make much sense. Qin Yihan put down the cup in his hand, opened the box of the incense burner, and used a pair of tweezers to poke at the burning incense. She did all of this in a simple and casual manner, busy but not messy. It looked like an ordinary mother and daughter chatting while doing housework. Then why are you doing this? Because I like him. Qin Etienne chuckled. There are so many pitiful people, and I don't take off my clothes for them to see, right? But he's the first man I've fallen in love with so seriously, and I always want to do something for him. I know it's your style. Every decision had to be carefully calculated. Every investment had to have the greatest return. Moreover, a woman in charge of such a huge family, how much resistance will there be in front of her? You've never told me, but I can imagine it in my heart. I'm your daughter, and I'm not stupid at all. I know I can't influence you, let alone the overall situation, but as you said just now, you're my mother first, and then you're the manager of the group. Which parent in the world doesn't think about their daughter? If I don't do this, then he has no hope at all. If I do this, you'll think about him more or less, right? The woman on the screen frowned and said, This is the man you want? This is the happiness you want? You should know that the most basic quality of an outstanding woman is to know how to make choices. Not only can they run a business well, but they can also run a family well. Qin Etienne looked up at his mother and said with a smile, If the person you liked back then wasn't my father, would you still be willing to take over everything in the Qin family? The woman shook her head and said firmly, I'll destroy it. Look, I'm not like you at all. Qin Etienne said with a smile, Since I like him, other men have become heir. I've never had them, so how can I make choices? Li Xinyan pondered for a long time, looked at his daughter's delicate and dignified face, and said, I'll reject the proposal of the general family. Chapter 794. After eating and drinking to their heart's content, they bade farewell to their friends at the entrance of the garden restaurant. Mu Ying, a competent driver and bodyguard, was already waiting at the entrance of the restaurant. Seeing Mu Ying's aura, Fang Yan's friends were envious. Chen Yanqing looked at Fang Yan and said jokingly, If you and the Qin family's Missy are together, would the Jiang family dare to bully you? Yi Fengsheng widened his eyes and said angrily, Chen Yanqing, what are you talking about? If Fang Yan is the kind of person who fawns on the rich, would we be willing to be friends with such a person? He would abandon his purest and most precious love for a little immediate benefit. This kind of person is the modern Chinshimi. He can abandon love and friendship. We don't even know when he will sell us out. After a pause, he continued, besides, if Fang Yen and the Qin family's Missy get together, what will happen to my sister? My sister got together with Fang Yen first. If he abandons my sister, she will chop him into hundreds of pieces and feed him to the dogs. Thinking of Yi Ro's notoriety and her previous actions, Chen Yanqing realized that she had made a serious mistake. She quickly explained, I'm joking. I'm worried about Fang Yan's situation. Actually, I've always supported Fang Yen and your sister being together. Think about it, we are all from Swallow Dock. We are childhood sweethearts and know each other very well. One of us has the heart of Taiji, and the other is likely to become the youngest Heavenly Dao realm expert in Swallow Dock. Fang Yen and Wenro are a match made in heaven. Why are you pulling me along? Wang Kaixin chuckled and said, Chen Yanqing, why are you so nervous? It's not like Yi Ro will jump out and kick your ass at any time. Who's nervous? I'm just saying what I think, Chen Yanqing said in a bad mood. Li Xiaoyan waved his hand and said, all right, don't talk so much. They are still waiting. The Qin family is the Qin family. Look at the driver. If he walks with us, others will think that we are his drivers. We can only be drivers if we go to the Qin family. There was always an endless amount of nonsense between brothers. Go back and rest, Fang Yen said with a smile. I'll wait for you at Flower City. Everyone agreed on a time to gather at Huaqing and then dispersed. When Fang Yen was about to get into the car, a blue sports car honked not far away. When Fang Yen looked over, the blue Maserati blinked twice mischievously, and then everything returned to the tranquil night. Mu Ying also looked over curiously and asked, your friend? It should be. Fang Yen nodded and said, you go back first. I'll go back by myself later. Mu Ying grinned and said, you want me to go back and tell Miss that you were taken away by another beautiful lady? How do you know it's a beautiful lady? Are there any unattractive ladies around you? Fang Yen touched his nose and said with a smile, I don't think so. After Mu Ying drove away, Fang Yen walked toward the Maserati in the corner of the hotel parking lot that was full of rumors. The window slid down and Xia, who was wearing big sunglasses, waved at Fang Yen and said, get in the car. Fang Yen opened the door and got in the car. Looking at Xia's clothes, he asked, have you been waiting for a long time? I know you're eating with friends here, so it's not convenient to go up and find you. I don't want to disturb your mood, so I sat outside for a while. Xia started the car and drove out of the hotel. Fang Yen was moved. In this world, there weren't many men who could make a superstar like Xia wait, right? Where are we going? Fang Yen asked. I'll take you to see an old man. Xia said. Fang Yen pondered, looked at Xia and asked, do you think this is good? Xia said directly. Then why are you still here? I do. Although he was driving a sports car, the speed of the summer was not crazy at all. On the contrary, it was much gentler than some of the cars that Fang Yen had ridden in. Looking at the rapidly retreating night scene, Fang Yen sighed softly and said, when the disaster came, I thought I had nothing. What I could take out was pitifully little. The enemy only needed to launch a full power charge and they would be able to crush us into pieces. Only now do I understand how rich I am. With the protection of such power, no one can easily knock me down. Fang Yen, do you know why everyone is willing to help you? While driving, he had a semi-serious conversation with Fang Yen. Her expression was relaxed when she spoke, but the content of her words was very serious. Because I'm a good person? Fang Yen asked with a smile. Yes, because you're a good person. Since Xia agreed with Fang Yan's joke. You're willing to help others, but you subconsciously reject their help. It's precisely because of this that everyone wants to do something for you. Then I hope that good people will be safe for the rest of their lives. Fang Yen said with a smile, but in his heart he was carefully recalling every word that Xia Chen had said. Did I help anyone? Ruan Jing was a sissy. Every time he fought with someone, he would cry and hate iron for not becoming steel. Every time he fought with someone, he would fiercely praise him. Yi Fengsheng had repeatedly failed in his pursuit of a girl. He had accompanied him to lose weight, but in the end, he had become fatter and fatter. Chen Yanqing had asked Fang Yen to teach him Tai Chi. Am I really a good person? Fang Yen couldn't help but ask such a question in his heart. Fang Yen had always known that Xia Chen's identity was not simple, but after the sports car had been inspected over and over again, he finally realized that it was not simple. Xia Chen parked the car in front of the door and knocked on the wooden door of the small courtyard. The one who opened the door was a young man with delicate features. He was very excited to see Xia Chen and happily shouted, "Sister Xia, you're back? The chief is playing chess in the study. Little Zhou, I brought a friend back. You don't need to accompany me," Xia Ji said with a smile as he led Fang Yen to the second floor. The door to the study was open. An old man with white hair and beard was sitting in front of the desk, playing chess with himself. He was playing the simplest chess, scratching his ears and cheeks. It looked like he was stuck in the game. "Grandpa," Xia called out with a smile. Seeing that Xia Chen had returned, the old man's eyes lit up. He said, "I heard a sound outside just now. I thought it was the kid from the Wang family next door who came back. I didn't expect it to be my big star granddaughter. Come, help Grandpa see what I'm going to do next." Xia Chen walked over to look at the chessboard and said, "Grandfather, you've forced yourself into a corner. From now on, we'll each hold one side and fight." "But I like to play chess with my precious granddaughter." The old man was overjoyed. Xia Chen's chess skills were not bad, but in the end he was still defeated by his grandfather's horse. The old man laughed heartily, looked at Xia Ji and said, "You purposely went easy on me at the end. Tell me, what do you want from me this time?" Xia pointed at Fang Yen and said, "Grandfather, he's my friend Fang Yen." The old man's gaze swept across Fang Yan's face and said, "He's a good seedling. Grandfather, you want to pull people into the army again? Not everyone wants to be a soldier. You silly girl." The old man shook his head and said, "I'm looking at his eyebrows. This kid has a small stomach, but his ambition is big. His future is limitless. However, since you brought him to see me, it means that you've been in some trouble recently, right? Grandfather, the Jiang family is bullying others." Xia said angrily. "They insist on snatching other people's things from their own homes. Do you think it's infuriating?" The old man chuckled as he looked at Fang Yen and asked, "Did you have a conflict with the Jiang family?" "Yes." Fang Yen answered honestly. He could tell that this old man was pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger. The divine light in his eyes was restrained. Nothing could escape his calculations. It's not that easy to provoke a general who cherishes his fortune. The old man sighed. "What do you think?" "What?" Fang Yen looked at old man Xia in confusion. "I'm here to ask for help. Why did you ask me what I think?" "There has to be a rule," the old man said with a smile. "This is a battle. How can there be no rules in a battle? The soldiers are incompetent and the three armies are exhausted. You are now the general who leads the three armies. I can't die under your hands in vain." "Grandfather, what are you talking about?" Xia Ji complained. "Joking with young people," old man Xia said with a smile. Fang Yen thought for a moment, then said, "I can only borrow the power to hurt others." Old man Xia waved his hand and said, "Your goal has been achieved. You can go back now." Fang Yen bowed deeply to old man Xia and said, "Thank you. When this matter is over, I'll come back to pay you a visit." Old man Xia's face was full of praise as he said, "No wonder those brats from the Jiang family can't beat you. You've lived like a human." Fang Yan's smile was sincere as he said, "I still need to learn a lot from you, elder." Fang Yen took her leave, and Xia Chen could only follow her out. After getting on the car, Xia couldn't help but ask, "Why are you leaving so soon? Have you two made an agreement?" "It's settled," Fang Yen said with a smile. "Ever since I stepped into your house, we've reached an agreement." Chapter 795. Borrowing power to hurt people, whose power to borrow. Borrowing the power of the Qin family, borrowing the power of the Xia family, borrowing the power of all the people that could be borrowed. No matter the outcome of the negotiation between the Fang Yen and the Qin family, Fang Yen had to show that our negotiation went smoothly. The Qin family is on our side, don't bully me, or my big brother will trample you to death at any moment. Besides, Fang Yen was now living in the private villa of the Qin family's eldest daughter, Qin Etian. With Qin Etian's high reputation and influence in Beijing, this matter had probably fallen into the eyes of people with ulterior motives on the first day Fang Yen arrived in Beijing. It was unknown whether it was intentional or not, but this matter itself could give people unlimited imagination. If it was intentional, then it proved that Qin Etian treated Fang Yen with good intentions. She did not hesitate to sacrifice her reputation in order to create momentum and prestige for Fang Yen in the outside world. There was another possibility. Perhaps Qin Etian had already had a premonition that Fang Yan's request for help would fail before Fang Yen set foot on the land of Yanjing, so he had placed such a chess piece in advance. At that time, Fang Yen had asked Muing to send him to the hotel, saying that it was very inconvenient to stay here. At that time, Muing had said, "Miss doesn't care, what do you have to care about?" Thinking about it carefully, it was a deep feeling. Fang Yen followed Xia to the Xia family. He didn't even drink a cup of tea from the Xia family. But didn't even occupy a corner of the Xia family's chair, but Fang Yen got a lot of harvest. Old Master Xia was indeed a smart person. With just a few words, he made Fang Yen see the moon through the dark clouds. Borrowing the power of the world. In a situation where the Qin family was unwilling to go all out to fight against such a giant, this was the best and only choice. If all the negotiations were like this, the world would be too harmonious. Xia drove the car out of the military courtyard and sighed. I grew up in such a family, and only now do I slowly come back to it. You grew up in Swallow Dock, but your reaction speed is dozens of times faster than mine. What did you eat to grow up? How can there be such a big gap between people? Xia Chen had an extraordinary background and had been in the entertainment industry for many years. He was quite satisfied with his IQ and EQ. However, he realized that he was still far inferior to Fang Yen. I'm just thinking a little more. With a smile on his face, Fang Yen said, "Too many things happened to my family when I was young, so my mind is more sensitive. After I grew up, I was often bullied by a girl. I couldn't beat her, so I always wanted to take revenge. I used all kinds of methods." "That's not a reason," Summer said. Taking revenge on a girl and what you're doing now are two completely different concepts. And that girl is the girl you like. How did you know? Fang Yen asked in surprise. When you talk about her, your eyes narrow, and you can't hide the smile on your face. Xia Chen pretended to be angry and said, "Please, I'm also a woman, okay? Showing such a strong love for another woman in front of a woman will make people jealous, okay? If I can't hold the steering wheel because I'm angry, it'll be 2 lives in a car. It's going to be on the headlines tomorrow," Fang Yen said with a smile. "How about I leave some more clues and lead this car accident to the Jiang family? Do you think they'll be in trouble? Whoever provokes you is unlucky." Xia Kiki giggled. Her laughter was as pleasant to the ear as her singing voice. "However, I don't want to die with you. I don't want to die now. I want to do a lot of things. If you don't die, I won't die either. It's too lonely to walk the Yellow Springs Road alone," Fang Yen said with a smile. "But I really have to thank you for today. It's not like I did anything." Xiaji curled his lips, looking as cute as a young girl. "It's all because of you and our family's old man. I haven't even had the time to say a good word for you, and the 2 of you have already come to an agreement. I'm standing there like an idiot. You're still staying in the Qin family's young Mrs. Mansion at night? You know about this too?" Fang Yen smiled bitterly. "Who doesn't know? The entire Maple Leaf Club is talking about this. Before your plane even landed at Beijing Airport, countless pairs of eyes were staring at it. Otherwise, how would I know that you came to Beijing if you didn't call me? How would I know that you, Yi Fengxing, Li Xiaotian, and the others were gathering at the Garden Hotel?" Fang Yen looked out the window into the dark world. He thought to himself, the Jiang family should know about this too, right? How would they react at this moment? "Kiss and Yuan Lin miss you very much." Xia Ji suddenly said. They're very busy right now, very busy. They have a lot of jobs every day. I've already asked the company to shorten their schedule, but there are still a lot of things to do. Perhaps this is what we mean when we say that people in the martial arts world are not good. However, as long as we're together, they'll always mention you. They'll always say how Mr. Fang is. Fang Yen, you should go see them when you have time. I will. Fang Yen nodded. Even if I'm not here, I'm still silently watching them from behind, cheering them on and telling them to work hard. I'll pass it on. The car drove up the mountain road, and Xia slowed it down again. At this time, she was no longer talking to Fang Yen. Instead, she was focused on the road ahead. It wasn't until they reached the entrance of Qin Etienne's villa that Xia let out a sigh of relief. She looked at Fang Yen and said with a smile, I've finally delivered you safely. Fang Yen raised her eyebrows and said, Are you all right alone? No problem. Xia said, I'll pay attention to some things. Fang Yen thought for a moment, then said, I'm worried. I'll send you off. You send me off, and I'll send you off again. Are you still going to sleep tonight? If Miss Qin suspects that we have some secret relationship, wouldn't she hate me to death? Fang Yen smiled and said, How can I let a girl drive alone on the mountain road? You drive me to the entrance of your neighborhood, and then I drive your car back. You don't just have this car, do you? Yes, gentlemen. Thank you for your hard work, miss. The two looked at each other and laughed. This kind of knowledgeable friend relationship was really good, free and easy, but also concerned about each other. Fang Yen did not expect Yi Daoling to send Ruan Jing to pick him up. Based on Fang Yan's understanding of Yi Daoling, this man was someone who would not release an eagle until he saw a rabbit. If there were no attractive enough benefits, he would not easily make any decision. Besides, he was currently at war with the general family. With his sensitive position, he should not have contacted him. However, Ruan Jing came to his door early in the morning. Along the way, Fang Yen kept interrogating Ruan Jing. Ruan Jing just laughed along with him, not telling him why Yi Daoling wanted to see Fang Yen. Forget it, I won't force you. Anyway, we'll know in a while. Fang Yen waved his hand and said, It's useless even if you force me. Ruan Jing said with a wry smile. We drank together last night and received a call from the boss in the middle of the night. He asked me to pick you up this morning. He said that he wanted to treat you to Yanjing's authentic fried liver. Please, do you really like to eat that thing? I accompanied the boss to eat twice, and every time I felt like vomiting. I think it's okay. Fang Yen said with a smile. Even if I eat with your boss, I'm afraid it won't taste anything. That's true. Anyway, I don't want to eat with the boss. If the boss asks later, I'll say that I've eaten. When they arrived at the small courtyard that Fang Yen came to last time, Yi Daoling was eating breakfast at home. Yezi hadn't gone to school yet. When she saw Fang Yen coming over, she waved at him and said, Come quickly, my dad specially left a bowl for you. It's still hot in the pot. I'll get someone to bring it to you. As he spoke, a servant brought over a large bowl of steaming hot fried liver. Yi Daoling glanced at Ruan Jing and said, You sit down and eat something together. You went out early in the morning, so you probably haven't eaten anything. Ruan Jing didn't want to smell the fried liver, but he had to obey the boss's orders. He just sat far away and scooped a bowl of millet porridge for himself. He picked a steamed bun and quickly ate it. While Fang Yen was eating the fried liver, Yi Daoling put down the newspaper in his hand and looked at Fang Yen and asked, If I didn't let Ruan Jing pick you up, you wouldn't have come to see me, right? Fang Yen nodded and said, Yes. Yi Daoling stared and said, Am I that unpopular with you? That's not it. Fang Yen waved his hand and said, I'm just afraid of causing trouble for you. Trouble? Hee, it's not like you don't know about the matter between me and the Jiang family. They clearly want to get rid of me. Your identity is sensitive, so why should I burn the flames of war on you? If I shamelessly came to your door, you definitely wouldn't be happy, right? Yi Daoling laughed out loud. He pointed at Fang Yen and said, You are really likable and annoying. Fang Yen wiped his mouth with a tissue and said, It's just that I speak too straightforwardly. This is one of my few shortcomings, and I don't want to change it. A person who is too perfect will be envied by others. Yezi giggled and said, Fang Yen, don't you have any shame? I don't want it, Fang Yen said. I'm going to lose my life. What's the use of shame? Yezi, eat less, you'll get fat. Chapter 796. For women, being fat was their spent foundation, scattered eyelashes, and a pimple on the tip of their nose. This was the most difficult thing to accept and tolerate. Fang Yen called her fat, in front of her father and Ruan Jing, which made Yezi almost melt the spoon in her hand. Of course, Fang Yen actually said, be careful not to get fat, but Yezi had automatically ignored the words, be careful not to get fat. You think I'm fat? Yezi's eyes were round, and she looked at Fang Yen angrily. I didn't say you're fat. Fang Yen looked at Yezi doubtfully and said, I mean eat less, be careful not to get fat. Why should I eat less? Do you think I'm fat now? I don't mean that. I'm worried about the future, that's what you mean. You think I'm fat. Otherwise, why would you ask me to eat less? How am I fat? I'm less than 100 pounds, okay? You're the fat one. My figure is so good, and you dare to think I'm fat. Do you have any taste? I think gentleness is beautiful. My taste is still good, right? Fang Yen said with a smile. It's fine if it's this matter. If I want to eat, I'll eat. Why do you care? Although Yezi said so, she didn't dare to dig the millet porridge in the bowl with the spoon in her hand. She put down the half piece of mung bean cake in her hand and stared at Fang Yen fiercely. She said, You big fatso. Fang Yen didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He looked at Ruan Jing and said, You judge, did I say she's fat? Ruan Jing looked up at Fang Yen blankly and said, What were you talking about? I was busy eating and didn't hear it clearly. Okay. Yi Daoling waved his hand, looked at his baby daughter and said, Yezi, are you going to school? No, I'm not in the mood. Yezi's eyes were still staring at Fang Yen. She said, I'm going to practice. Lose weight. Fang Yen didn't say you were fat. Yi Daoling said to uphold justice. He did. He just said it clearly, but you still favor him. Yi Zi was also dissatisfied with her father. He thinks your daughter is ugly, but you still speak up for him. Are you really my father or not? In the eyes of women, fat was ugly. This had already risen to the level of a personal attack by Fang Yen. All right. Yi Daoling raised his hand in surrender. I'll give Fang Yen a good scolding later. Hurry up and go to school. Yezi looked at Fang Yen and said, I won't go. I want to stay and see how you criticize him. Yi Daoling was helpless. He looked at Fang Yen and said, You're usually quite good at talking. What's wrong with you today? Can you say that girls are fat? I didn't say that. Fang Yen felt even more wronged. I'm just giving you a friendly reminder. Isn't scolding people with good intentions? Isn't it illegal to kill someone with good intentions? Yi retorted. Yi Daoling looked at Fang Yen and asked, How's your talk with the Qin family? It's pretty good. Fang Yen said with a smile, They value me quite a bit. Is it the Qin family that values you, or the Qin family's eldest daughter, Qin Yitin, that values you? Yi Daoling squinted his eyes and smiled as he asked, Is there a difference? Yi Daoling pointed at Fang Yen with his finger and said, You brat, you don't even say a word of truth in front of third uncle. Fang Yen laughed and said, My grandfather asked me this question, and this is the only answer I have. Also, they really treat me very well. Yi Daoling looked at Fang Yen with burning eyes and asked, Did they put forward any conditions? Li Xinyan is a very powerful woman. She's the smartest woman I've ever seen. People like her can't be casually dismissed. She will definitely put forward all kinds of conditions to you. It's said that the Jiang family is prepared to give her the entire Chao Yen. What can you give her? I can give her loyalty and a better future for Chao Yen. Fang Yen said with a smile. She's a smart woman. She should know how to choose. Fang Yen, this war came too early. Yi Daoling sighed softly. Obviously, he didn't think that Fang Yen and his companions had any chance of winning against a century-old clan like the Jiang family. Then, Why did you invite me to eat fried liver? Fang Yen put down his chopsticks and wiped his mouth with a napkin. We all came from Swallow Dock. What's wrong with me inviting you to a meal? Does the people outside still have an opinion on this matter? Many people like you are willing to invite me to a meal. The Jiang family will reevaluate my value and power. They will think about what they can gain by fighting someone like me. Or rather, what they will lose. If the loss is greater than the value of the gain, I'm sure they will reconsider this matter. Yi Daoling nodded and said, I don't have any power, but I can ride the sword. The way to borrow power is very important. You should grasp it well. Many people are like me. They are willing to invite you to a meal, but they are also like me. They don't want to mess with you. I understand. Fang Yen looked like he had learned something and said, I'm already very grateful. Have you seen, sir? No. Fang Yen said. You should see, sir. Yi Daoling said. Fang Yen thought for a moment and nodded. I was negligent. It's not too late. After breakfast, Yi Daoling had to go to work. He asked Yi Zi if she wanted to go to school. He could give her a ride. Yi Zi shook her head. She wouldn't be in a good mood today. It would be a waste of time to go to school. Yi Daoling smiled and told Ruan Jing to accompany Fang Yen. He took his driver to work. Yi Daoling left and there was no need for Fang Yen to stay. When he was about to get up and leave, Yi Zi shouted, Fang Yen. Fang Yen was shocked. He thought that this little girl wouldn't be looking for trouble, right? He looked at Yi Zi apologetically and said, I really didn't say you were fat, nor did I think you were ugly. I always thought that you and your sister are the most beautiful pair of twins in Swallow Dock. Even in the entire Yanjing, you can be ranked in the top 3. My sister and I are in the top 3. Who is in the top 3? Yi Zi blinked and asked. Fang Yen thought about it and said, Then give it to Qin Yitian? Yi Zi said angrily. Although she is indeed very beautiful, I must stand on my sister's side. Fang Yen, why do you have to live in Qin Yitian's villa? Because I can't live there. Fang Yen said with a smile. Yi Zi thought about it and said with a red face, Why don't you come to my house? Seeing that Fang Yen didn't speak, Yi Zi stamped her feet angrily and said, It's not like you haven't lived there before. How about next time? I'm going back to Huaqing. Fang Yen said. Yi Zi was still a little unhappy and said, Then it's a deal. Next time you come to my house. You are not allowed to live in Qin Yitian's house. My sister is not here. I have to help her look after you. Fang Yen smiled bitterly and said, Why are you looking at me? You should go to school quickly. Sitting in the car on the way back, Ruan Jing suddenly asked, Fang Yen, do you like Yi Zi? Fang Yen was stunned and said, What are you thinking? I have nothing to do with Yi Zi. No, she is Yi Gentle's sister. That's our relationship. I feel that she likes you. Ruan Jing said. Fang Yen sneered and said, You don't even dare to fall in love. How can you say, I feel? Fang Yen first went home to visit his grandfather and mother. Seeing Fang Yen back, his mother was very happy and went out with a small basket. She said that she would go to the back mountain to pick some fruits and vegetables and cook something delicious for Fang Yen in the evening. Fang Hui's spirit was better than the last time Fang Yen came back, and his eyes were much brighter. After Lu Wan went out with the basket, Fang Hui waved to Fang Yen and said, Fang Yen, come to the ancestral hall with me. Okay, Grandpa. Fang Yen nodded and pushed Fang Hui's wheelchair to the ancestral hall. Because there were not many people in the Fang family, the ancestral hall was quite quiet. After Fang Yen went in, he cleaned the dust on the altar table and lit the incense in front of the ancestral tablets of the Fang family. Then he knelt on the cattail hassock on the ground and looked at the tablet of his father, Fang Yixing, in silence for a long time. Talk to your father. Fang Hui sat next to him and said, He can hear me. Fang Yen didn't respond. He looked at the black and white photo of his father on the tablet and fell into memory. The strict and gentle man, the man who was not good at expressing his feelings, the man who urged his wife to call him every time he missed his son, the man who loved painting but was despised by the people of Swallow Dock all his life, the man who would rather die than surrender and wanted to stop the murderer. He was gone. It became a scar in his heart, an emotional cancer that spread all over his body. No advanced equipment could remove it. I know what you are doing and how dangerous it is. Fang Hui looked at the back of Fang Yan's head and said in a hoarse but sonorous voice, I really want to tell you to give up and come back to Swallow Dock. But if the hatred has blossomed and borne fruit, even Swallow Dock can't protect us. Your father, he is a painful lesson. Our Fang family has only one son for many generations, and it is the same in your generation. If you are alive, the Fang family still has hope. If you are not alive, the Fang family will be cut off from now on. Fang Yan, I don't have any other request. I just hope you can come back safely. Fang Hui's eyes were wet and soon they were full of tears. The wrinkles on his face were like sharp knives, stabbing Fang Yan's heart. He didn't hide his feelings. This old man, who was strong and had never bowed to anyone, sobbed and said, Come back alive. Chapter 797. Fang Hui had never begged anyone in his life, but this time he was pleading with Fang Yan, begging him to come back alive. Come back alive. Only those who had truly experienced life and death would be able to feel the weight of these 4 words. Fang Yan, you must come back alive. Fang Hui's body trembled violently because he was crying too hard. Big drops of tears rolled down his cheeks. I'm old and I may leave at any time. If you're gone, your mother can't live either. I'm alone with a widowed mother, and I'm the only child. If you're gone, the Fang family will be disbanded. Fang Yan turned around and kowtowed to Fang Hui, banging his head hard on the faded wooden floor of the ancestral hall. His eyes were red, and he said in a hoarse voice, Grandpa, I promise you I'll come back alive. You won't leave, and the Fang family won't be disbanded. Our Fang family will get better and better, flourish and prosper. You must also live well. Live to see me marry a wife and have children. Live to see your grandchildren surround your knees. Fang Hui reached out and stroked Fang Yan's head, saying, Then it's settled? It's settled. Fang Yan nodded. I won't go, and you're not allowed to go. Every single member of the Fang clan, every single one of them, will never leave again. Good boy, Fang Hui said with a gratified face. The old man took out a folded handkerchief from his pocket and wiped the tears on his face. He looked at Fang Yan, who was kneeling in front of him and crying, and shouted, What are you crying for? A man doesn't easily shed tears. If he were to weep like a girl, what would that look like? Are you still Fang Hui's grandson? Get up for me and wipe away my tears. If your mom sees this, she'll cry again. Be careful, I'll whip you when that happens. Fang Yan hurriedly climbed up from the ground and stared at the old man who was as fragile as a candle in the wind and could be extinguished at any time with a face full of astonishment. In the blink of an eye, he had turned into a stern face and loudly criticized his grandson for being a sissy. This old man used to be from Qingqing sect, right? His main specialty was to learn the unique skill of changing faces. Fang Hui threw the handkerchief in his hand to Fang Yan and said, Wipe the horse urine off your face. Smile, smile more naturally. Your mother went to the garden to pick vegetables and should be back soon. Fang Yan wiped his face with a handkerchief and said, Then I'll go pick her up. Old Master Fang waved his hand and said, Spend more time with her. Your mother has a stubborn personality and likes to keep everything to herself. You have to talk to her. It would be best if you could convince her to bring her to Huaqing to stay for a period of time. Why are you always accompanying an old man like me? Grandpa, my mother won't go to Huaqing, Fang Yan said with a wry smile. I've called her countless times, but I couldn't persuade her to stay there for a few days. Fang Hui sighed. I'm not dead yet. If I die, she'll be free. Grandpa, didn't we agree just now? Fang Yan said anxiously. Fang Hui grinned and said, A married daughter is like water that has been poured out. Lu Gang, that arrogant old man, wants to take his daughter back now, but there's no way. Xiaowan is a member of our Fang family now, so she's a member of our Fang family. I have to live and live well. I can't die just to fight with old man Lu. Fang Yan nodded with a smile and said, That's right. Grandpa often says that you're a reckless man, But he looks down on you from the bottom of his heart. You have to live well and see who lives longer. That's settled then. Feng Hui laughed. I'll call old man Lu later and tell him that I look down on such a stupid intellectual. He thinks he's great just because he can read a few words. I want to compete with him to see who lives the longest. Seeing that his grandpa Feng Hui had untied the knot in his heart and was truly happy, Feng Yan was a little relieved. Having an old man in the family was like having a treasure. Although the current pillar of the Feng family was Feng Yan, Feng Hui's life was of great significance to Feng Yan. As Feng Hui had said, if Feng Yan was gone, he and Feng Yan's mother, Lu Wan, would probably die. How could it not be the same for Feng Yan? I'm going to pick up my mother, Feng Yan said with a smile. Feng Hui waved his hand and said, Go. It's getting colder. Winter is coming. Yes. Winter is coming. Feng Yan said with a smile. Before Feng Yan could step out of the courtyard, he saw his mother, Lu Wan, coming back. Beside her was the little girl, Qingji. The two of them, one in front and one behind, seemed to be arguing about something. Madam, just help me carry the basket. It's heavy and will tire you out, Qingji said anxiously. You're really stupid. We're already at home, why are you still arguing with me? I've been planting vegetables for years. How can carrying a basket be a heavy job? Do you think I'll tire myself out? But, no buts. It's rare for Feng Yan to come back. I want to cook a few dishes for him personally. But you can cook if I bring the vegetables back. Silly girl, the vegetables were planted by me, and I was also the one who picked them. I'm satisfied to bring them back and cook them for my son. It's rare for me to want to do something, but you keep talking around me. Be careful, I'll find you a husband. Madam, I won't go out of the Feng family. I still have to serve you and take care of the children for Feng Yan when he gets married. Lu Wan smiled gently and said, I don't know when he can get married. If I can see that day earlier, I'll be relieved. Isn't Feng Yan in love with Miss Wenro? The whole Swallow Dock knows about it. Lu Wan sighed softly and said, with the current situation of the Feng family, I'm afraid that the Yi family will make things difficult for Feng Yan. Seeing Feng Yan standing in the yard, Lu Wan quickly changed the topic and said, Feng Yan, why are you standing here? Why don't you talk to Grandpa? When you're not at home, he keeps talking about you. Every day, he holds the mobile phone you gave him, but he refuses to call you. Feng Yan took the basket from his mother and said, Grandpa asked me to pick you up. He's afraid that you'll be tired. Qingji quickly explained, I'm going to help my mother carry the basket. Feng Yan looked at Qingji with a smile and said, I know. Qingji is a very considerate person. But my mother is right. It's time to find a husband for Qingji. Qingji blushed and ran to the yard first. She said, I'm going to the kitchen to cook. Feng Yan looked at Lu Wan's ruddy cheeks and asked, Mom, are you tired? Lu Wan shook her head and held Feng Yan's arm. She said, I'm cooking a meal for my son. How can I be tired? Feng Yan nodded and looked at his mother, Lu Wan. He said, Mom, don't worry. I'll marry Wenro and make her your wife. Lu Wan beamed with joy and said, Good, good. I believe you. It's not lively enough if we don't have a family. You can have more children. I'll try my best. Feng Yan said with a smile. When Yi Ro was reading in the room, Yi Fengsheng sneaked in and said, Sister, Feng Yan is back. Yi Ro responded lightly and said, Yezi told me on the phone. Yezi also knows? It seems that third uncle has seen Feng Yan. Do you think third uncle wants to show his support to Feng Yan? If he is willing to help, will Feng Yan's situation be better? Yi Ro raised her beautiful eyebrows and said, They don't want to help. They just stand on the shore and cheer for him when they are fighting in the sea. Is that so? Yi Fengsheng scratched his head and said, If third uncle refuses to help Feng Yan, won't Feng Yan be in danger? Yi Ro shook her head. Why not? Because I will help him. Yi Fengsheng widened his eyes and said, Sister, how will you help him? It's not like you don't know what kind of family the Jiang family is. Right now, the Jiang family is using their wealth and power to crush Feng Yan. Feng Yan is a very rich person. Hee hee, if you think about it this way, It's not a bad thing if Fang Yen becomes my brother-in-law. At least my sister won't have to suffer after marrying him. Yi Rou's eyes became sharp. Yi Fengsheng also knew that he had gone off topic, so he quickly returned to the topic and said, "Sister, it's not that we don't want to help, but with our family's wealth, even if we bet the entire Yi family, we probably won't be able to help Fang Yen. The Jiang family is too powerful, so powerful that unless the Qin family is willing to help. Otherwise, the wealth of 10 Yi families won't be a match for them." "I don't want to compete with the Jiang family in wealth," Yi Rou said indifferently. We don't want to compete with them in wealth? Then how are we going to compete with them? What are we going to use to help Fang Yen? We can't stop the Jiang family's wealth, and the Jiang family can't stop my martial arts." Yi Rou's expression was calm as she spoke, as if she was talking about something that had nothing to do with her. But Yi Fengsheng knew very well that when she said something like that, she would really do it. "I'll go kill everyone in the Jiang family, and then everything will be fine, right? Sister." Yi Fengsheng was so scared that his chubby face turned pale and red. "Don't do anything stupid. If you do that, our family will be finished. That's something we need to consider after we kill everyone in the Jiang family," Yi Rou said firmly. Chapter 798. Yi Fengsheng and Fang Yen were good brothers, very, very good brothers. When Fang Yen was in danger, he was the first to stand up for him. He was willing to help him, and he was willing to fight for him, even to the point of dying in battle. However, he had never thought of using such an extreme method to drag the entire Yi family out to fight the Jiang family. This was the thought process of men and women. Men would consider the honor of their family, the continuation of their bloodline, and the safety of their parents. They were willing to sacrifice themselves, but they would never drag their entire family down with them. However, women only needed to consider one thing: whether it was worth doing and whether they should do it. Yi Rou was very angry that someone bullied Fang Yen, so she wanted to punish those bad people who bullied her man. How could they not be bad people if they bullied her man? Yi Rou was at the Heavenly Dao realm. If she wanted to do such a thing, it was very likely that she would really do it. The world was huge, but there were very few Heavenly Dao realm experts. Unless the divine dragon personally interfered, or no one could stop Yi Rou. It was because he knew his cousin's character that she definitely wasn't joking. It was also because he knew her abilities that although Yi Fengsheng didn't know that Yi Rou had successfully climbed the Heavenly Dao, it was still easy for her to succeed with her current abilities. When that happened, Yi Rou's actions would be a devastating blow to the Yi family that had just risen in power. No country or person would allow such force to do such a thing. "Sis, can you stop joking?" Yi Fengsheng's face was filled with horror. "How can you say that it's something to be considered later? If you really kill everyone in the Jiang family, our Yi family will be destroyed as well." Yi Rou glanced at Yi Fengsheng and said, "I can choose not to do it." "As long as they stop attacking Fang Yen," Yi Rou said. "You can bring my words to the Jiang family. Or you can find someone to bring my words to the Jiang family. Sis, others will think we're crazy." "Crazy?" Yi Rou flipped open the book she was reading again and said with her head lowered, "Women are much more terrifying than crazy." Yi Fengsheng was thinking about how to persuade his sister to give up on this idea when he heard the sound of a car horn outside. Soon, it was noisy outside the courtyard. Yi Fengsheng greeted Yi Rou and said, "Sister, someone might be back. I'll go out and have a look." Yi Rou looked up at him and then buried her eyes in the book in her hands again. Yi Fengsheng didn't come back, but after a while, a servant came to ask Yi Rou to go out for dinner. Yi Rou closed the book and looked out of the window. Winter came, and the plants withered. However, the 2 frangipani he planted were lush and would carry a delicate fragrance with the breeze. "Who will come?" Yi Rou thought to herself. When there were no family members at home, they would eat in the small dining room. But when there were guests at home, they would eat in the hall. Today, they were having dinner in the living room, which proved that there were indeed guests at home. Yi Rou rarely paid attention to this matter. Most of the time, she just asked someone to send food to her room. But for some reason, her mind was exceptionally sensitive today. When Yi Ro walked to the door of the living room, she was stunned. There were no guests, but almost all the direct descendants of the Yi family were present. The patriarch sat at the head of the table, and beside him sat a few members of the Yi family's grandparents' generation. Father Yi Daowen, second uncle Yi Daoling, third uncle Yi Daoxian were all present. There were also Yi Fengsheng and a few juniors sitting at another table. Second uncle was busy with work and seldom came home. Third uncle Yi Daoxian was busy improving the Yi family style so that it could be promoted and tested in the military's special forces. He did not return home all year round, but today, they were all back. Yi Ro hesitated slightly before walking towards the table where Yi Fengsheng and company were sitting. "Ro!" Yi Daoling shouted. He waved at her and said with a warm smile, "Come sit here. The patriarch has something to ask you." Yi Ro thought for a moment and walked towards the head table. The other juniors were not surprised at all. It was no secret in the Yi family that the patriarch favored Yi Ro. Everyone was already used to it. Yi Ro was indeed outstanding. Ignoring everything else, just her martial arts alone was enough to suppress them to the point of suffocation. In their hearts, they were convinced by this. Furthermore, Yi Ro was cold on the outside but warm on the inside. She did not show any courtesy to outsiders, but she was extremely good to her family. Her brothers and sisters at home also liked her very much. Yi Ro sat at the end of the table, diagonally opposite the patriarch. The patriarch looked at Yi Ro lovingly and said with concern, "Ro, are you reading in your room again today?" "Yes, patriarch," Yi Ro said with a nod. "I know you are working hard, so I did not disturb you. I got someone to send some fruits over. You didn't forget to eat them, right?" "I ate them." "That's good. Girls eating more fruits is good for their bodies and skin. Although we Ro practice martial arts, our skin is more delicate than those rich young ladies who do not touch the sun. This is our capital as a woman." "Patriarch." Yi Daoling had no choice but to interrupt the patriarch's concern. If she was allowed to continue developing, there was probably no need to eat today's meal. "Why don't we first discuss that matter with Ro? You are so impatient." The patriarch looked at Yi Daoling with a complaining look and said, "No matter how Ro looks like, she is my good child." I know. Yi Daoling nodded repeatedly. "She is also our good child. Everyone dotes on her. Isn't everyone right?" Yi Daoling was worried that the patriarch would hold a grudge against him, so he wanted to drag some of his allies into the water. To his disappointment, no one stood up to respond to him. Yi Daoling laughed dryly and looked at Yi Ro and said, Ro, have you entered the heavenly law?" This question made many people present show a surprised expression. When did this happen? Yi Ro climbing the heavenly law was the top priority of the Yi family. Everyone in the Yi family had their hearts in their throats. Unfortunately, there were some changes in the end. Yi Ro failed to climb the heavenly law, but her life was saved by Fang Yan. Of course, this was what Fang Yan and Yi Ro said. Anyway, most people in the Yi family would not believe it. Yi Ro failed to climb the heavenly law and suffered a backlash from the heavenly law. Her body was weak for a period of time. Until now, she stayed at home all day to recuperate. Even her daily training had been suspended. Everyone was worried that they would hurt Yi Ro, so they did not even mention the heavenly law in front of her. Now that the family was gathered together, why did they mention the matter of climbing the heavenly law? Yi Fengsheng stared at everything that was happening around him. Second uncle was back, and so was his father. The important elders of the family had appeared, and the juniors of the direct line of descent were all present. Now, everyone was waiting for an answer? Was Yi Ro a Heavenly Dao Realm expert? Of course not. If she was a Heavenly Dao Realm expert, wouldn't the Jiang family be in for a bad time? Brother Fengsheng, you are usually close to Sister Ro. Do you know about this? What's going on? Ro succeeded in climbing the heavenly law? Didn't she just fail a while ago? Did she do it a second time? Isn't it too risky? I think it should be true. Otherwise, it's impossible for second uncle and third uncle to return at the same time. Yi Fengsheng shook his head and said, I don't know about this either. Everyone looked at Yi Ro with concern. Everyone's eyes were focused on Yi Ro's face. Yi-Ro didn't even look at their faces. She turned a blind eye to their gazes as she looked at Yi Daoling with an indifferent expression. She nodded and said, "That's right." What? The entire room was alarmed. Pleasant surprise, horror, envy, admiration, and curiosity. How long had it been since the last time she failed to climb the heavenly Tao? How did she suddenly become a heavenly Tao realm expert? Even Yi Daoling, who had asked the question, was momentarily stunned. He looked at Yi-Ro in disbelief and said, "Ro, you can't joke around. Is this true?" Yi-Ro looked at Yi Daoling and said, "Have I ever joked with you?" "Not really." Yi Daoling chuckled as his eyes narrowed into a slit. "It was your third uncle who received some news and called me to confirm it. I said that I didn't even know about this. After a discussion, we decided to personally rush back to discuss it with you." After pondering for a moment, Yi Daowen looked at Yi-Ro and asked, "When did this happen? We didn't hear anything about it. You didn't fail the last time, right?" "I failed the last time," Yi-Ro said. "And then you tried again?" Yi Daoling frowned. Ro, I know you are competitive and you aren't willing to admit defeat so easily. But such matters still need a gradual cycle. You can't rush it, or else problems will easily occur. I failed to climb the heavenly Tao. It was Fang Yen who saved me, Yi-Ro said. He suffered the backlash of the heavenly Tao himself, but he helped me become a heavenly Tao realm expert. What? The hall was in an uproar once again as everyone discussed the matter. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.